For the upcoming right-hander, brake 30 meters later and ease off the pressure.
Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of rapid fire racing action in the one and only Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship Season 9, as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing and sponsored by Trophy AI. It is round number 4 of 10. We have made our way from Japan to Belgium for the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, a circuit that arguably needs no introduction and is one of the staple legends in an international motorsporting calendar campaign. Spanning nowadays 4.35 miles or 7 kilometres in length, depending on your preference of units, is a circuit that's gradually evolved from the old, risky and highly dangerous run through the Ardennes forest of many a year ago, all the way back to 1921, and it has evolved now into the absolutely wonderful circuit that plays host on a regular basis to the likes of Formula 1, World Endurance Championship and Porsche Cup Europe. At its core, its 19 corners are split across 3 wonderful sectors, where the idea of the game here is there's something for everyone to be challenged with, where it be high-speed chicanes, well not high-speed chicanes, high-speed curves I should say, that they'll feel like chicanes given the speed at which the corners come, or alternatively the low-speed Bostock chicane, or of course the wonderful run of Fuji to Radion and down the Kemmel Straight. It is a circuit like no other when it puts drivers to the test, and that's before you even consider weather, which can always serve to mix things up. Indeed, there could be weather on the cards today. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you to this live broadcast from Circuit Side. You're tuning in to Split B here on the official Evolution Sim Racing YouTube channel. Indeed, just go to youtube.com and search for Evolution Sim Racing or ESR, and you can be tuning in right now. We do say hello to you guys and girls tuning in. Don't be shy, feel free to say hi and let us know how you're doing today. But as we get set and ready to go racing today, well, for Split B, it definitely has been a season so far of many of a story, and we continue to tell you the story here. And in the commentary booth, you have myself, Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Brit in the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I will bring you all your racing action as it unfolds over the championship campaign. But coming into tonight, let's give you a recap of the season so far and what is in store. And as we can see, as we make our way into this round, well, we are 3 rounds in. Last time out, it was at the Fuji Grand Prix circuit, the Fuji International Speedway as it's known in full. And what a round it was, with mixed conditions, particularly heavy rain really dominating proceedings in qualifying and in the early stage of the race, but a drying circuit towards the end meant there was a challenge for all the drivers to try and figure out exactly how best to position themselves when it came to the setup of the car and knowing when to go from wets to slicks. But some drivers got it absolutely right. The best of them all, well, the man who absolutely ran away rampant to victory, albeit had to to do the hard way coming through the field after putting on a sensational pole lap was none other than the Premier class of Dean Sheasby, who absolutely left jaws wide hanging, given the fact he made his way through the field after some early contact with Nick Stubb, and in the end was able to come home the best part of 7 seconds clear of the rest of the field. Meanwhile, in the Evo class, well, whilst it may have been another podium for championship leader Jordan Maymar, well, by comparison, Thiago Reza finally taking his first class win of the season, and well, will it be his run of momentum today that continues to keep him on top form, or could we see another name in the Evo class rise to the top step of the podium, or could Jordan Maymar even take his first win of the season? All those questions and more are to be answered here today, and of course it is the 17th of July. After today, well, we go from our 1 hour feature format, which really has been the course of back-to-back rounds so far, and we'll be heading into a triple header of sprint race rounds, beginning with round number 5 at the Virginia International Raceway's full course on the 24th of July, and from the US of A, we'll then make our way back to the European continent for the Italian circuit and the Misano Grand Prix circuit on the 31st of July, and in round number 7, we complete the sprint triple header in Europe at the Magny Cours circuit, or the circuit de Magny Cours as it's known in full, and that will be on the 7th of August there, quite poetic, the 7th day of the 8th month for round number 7, and indeed the Grand Prix circuit there will be in brilliant sunshine, albeit mixed conditions do appear at Misano, and where it's sun at VIR. But where it's sun, whether it's rain or somewhere in between, the racing's always going to stay interesting, of course, and that's why as we come onto our championship standings, well, we do have plenty of interesting stories. As we can see, starting off there with James Bostock. Well, right now on 194 points, and in the Premier class, the Drivers' Championship leader will be feeling as though he's under threat. He has been Mr. Consistent, albeit his first finish outside the top 5 of the class as of the Fuji Grand Prix circuit last week means that he has slightly lost a bit of a lead. However, the man who's leapt his way all the way into second with an absolutely perfect score, Dean Sheasby, who after difficulty in the opening 3 race of the season, no difficulty whatsoever in making sure to achieve maximum points. And conversely, Matthias Smolny, the man who took the season opening win, well, he made a gamble to go to slicks way too early in Japan, and that's why in the end he floundered to a 12th place finish, and he falls to third on 177 points. However, further 21 points behind him, it's Luke Bailey in 4th place for Glass Tech Racing, ahead of Flatline Racing's Andrew Fellows, who wasn't on the grid last time out, but back today as we understand it, and your top 6 in the Premier being completed by John Ludbrook with a 4th place finish, and he's absolutely ecstatic about that, and one really now started to build some momentum. In 7th place, the sim coach driver from Sweden of Robin Pioneer there, and what a non-finish last time out at Fuji costing him dear, and he'll be hoping for a much better day today as he tries to return to top 5 performances. But from the Corvette driver to another McLaren of Flatline Racing's Rob Smith, well then we do have beyond Smith on 107 points, only a further point to Mark De Vries, with George Stone completing a top 10 there for Michelin powered by Maud's, and well, what a 2nd place finish it was for him. He was leading for a good portion of the race, he got it absolutely right in the conditions at Fuji, however he didn't have the pace to stop Sheasby flying past him, and really Stone was the best of the rest when it came to the challenge he was confronted with. Menno Blome, who we believe is not going to be on the grid today because he is undergoing a house move, but we wish him all the best as his house move goes underway. He sits in 11th, and from the Dutchman to the Briton of Adam Baker, he completes your top 12 in the Premier class there with that 3rd place last time out. Going on to the Evo class standings, well, if it's only 4 points separating the top 2 in Premier, in the Evo class it's the best part of 17 separating the top 2, and we have a slightly different story. Because Mr. Consistent yet to score a win, but he scored 3 podiums in 4 races, Jordan Maymar for Simcast Racing Team UK. Can anybody blunt his momentum? Well, Thiago Reyes will be hoping for the 9 Pegasus Pantera team that he was able to do so last time out, given the fact that that win was a long time coming. Indeed, denied it at Daytona, Brands Hatch didn't come his way, and therefore, well, it seemed to work out that time on what was the 4th round, well, the 4th race of asking, the 3rd round of asking. However, behind him, by the best part of 35 points, the man who took 2nd place last time out, Jonathan Berry, because there was a bit of a mix-up right at the end of the race with multiple drivers being demoted down positions right at the end due to post-race time penalties by not being able to serve drive-through penalties through instance points picked up right at the end of the race. But Berry was one of the fortunate recipients to be promoted to a 2nd place finish, and therefore the Michelin R powered by Maud's driver. Remember, he has that non-finish from Daytona, but otherwise all his races have been on the podium. 2 seconds, 1 first. Could he return to winning ways? We will see. Robert Savage sits in 4th for Michelin R Esports, just behind his teammate there by 20 points, and there's a further 10 to Grant Miller, the Phoenix Racing Red driver, who we have definitely found out that Rain and Grant Miller do not mix, it would seem, and well, unfortunately did not come away on a strong performance, did the Scotsman in Japan. Denny Plugger sits in 6th ahead of Owen Seward, and it's Steve Rubino in 8th place, the man who had a lightning start to the season, only to find himself 15th in the 2nd race at Brands Hatch, and a non-finish last time out. Can he bounce back soon? Because right now we're expecting the Hobo Racing driver to have a landmark result at some point, given his performances in the opening 2 races of the season. Barry Wemman stays in 9th there for Dexterous Motorsport Kumar on 112 points, and then Samuel Clark rounding off your Evo top 10, with Craig Tillotson and Sean Clark completing at the top 12 of the Evo standings. We're coming on to the Teams Championship standings, and just to remind you, of course, whereas the Drivers' Championship standings we've walked you through are specific to Split B, where we have the Evo and the Premier classes, and meanwhile, of course, in Split A, you do have the Elite and the Pro classes. Well, here in the Teams Championship, this is across all 4 classes, all the different teams, both of the splits, and therefore all the points are accounted for here, regardless of what class you're in and what split you're in. And as we can see, it's Mission Art Esports who lead the way on 450 points, and well, their story of the season so far has been one of great success, and they are now leading comfortably by the best part of 88 points. At least they'll feel ahead of RDSA Esports. Now, RDSA Esports had a very shaky start to the season, but they've leapt their way back to second place after a great set of results at Fuji, but they're only 3 points ahead of Kame GP2, and indeed a very reliable team at that is the Porsche McLaren combination team. Then we do have Dexterous Motorsports by ORA sitting in 4th place there, and on 358 points, they're only a point behind the top 3, and it's a further 17 points to Vulcan Motorsports, who are under major pressure to hold on to the top 5. But where is that pressure coming from? Well, from their 341 points, you have the 334 of Simcast Racing Team UK. Behind them, it's Altitude 3M Esports. They're not too far behind, and it's even close there. Another 8 points before you get to Phoenix Racing. Then we do have SimCoach in 9th place, down 317 points. They had a very difficult round in Japan. They need to bounce back here today because the momentum has been completely swept away from them. Otherwise, they may be swallowed up by Glass Tech Racing, who round off your team's top 10 on 304 points. And well, in 11th, not shown on screen, on 292 points, it is HSR, who could, if things go their way, break into the top 10 today. But speaking of today then, well, where are we? Well, we said we're at Spa-Francorchamps, but let's talk about it a little bit more. We are here at the circuit, located in the village of Francorchamps in the municipality of Stavelot in the Wallonia region of the state of Liège in Belgium. Indeed, a bit of a mouthful there, but indeed the way Belgium is broke up into states, provinces and districts is absolutely astounding. What's also astounding here is the absolute behemoth of a circuit on store, because 4.35 miles or 7 kilometres in length, and it is a circuit which many of the course names, well, the corner names will be household names to you, whether it be at turn number 1 at La Source, or alternatively Urugin turns 2, 3 and 4, the Camel Straight, the highest point of speed across the circuit's length, or the run of the chicane of Lacombe into none other than Rivage at turn number 8, before they exit out and head towards No Name at turn number 9, or Jackie X Corner as it's known in the modern era. For one corner as well, don't forget about the double left-hander that's completely downhill and off camber, nor the run through the medium speed chicane of Fanges in towards Stavelot 1 and Stavelot 2 at turns 14 and 15, where drivers will roar the way all the way up towards the very hard to get right fast left-hander of Blanchimont, but get it right, they'll only have 2 corners between them and the finish line, and it will be the Bostock chicane that turns 18 and 19, the lowest speed corners on the circuit if you exclude La Source. Indeed, so many corners that are staples to this circuit, overtaking opportunities practically everywhere as well. We couldn't ask for a better host circuit for today. But with our circuit introduced, of course, well, big thank you to iRacing.com for the fantastic simulator and the chat mats that come with it as well. I think it's only appropriate we head back to circuit side, because as we do, qualifying has just kicked off. We are 2 minutes into qualifying, and well, all our drivers right now starting to get those qualifying laps in. Now, it's going to be an interesting one this evening, because Fuji, we had rain in qualifying, albeit we also had it in practice, but the rain stopped by the end of qualifying, and at the start of the race there was a little bit of spray and the occasional sprinkle of rain, but beyond that there was nothing more, and the circuit started to dry. We're expecting here today in Belgium mixed conditions. It is very likely practice has been dry. We're expecting qualifying to also be dry for the most part, albeit we have got some cloud coming in. However, where things are going to take a turn for the interesting is in the race, because we have got a prediction that there is going to be intermittent showers over the race distance, and we may see the best part of 2 portions of light rain interrupt the racing. Albeit it won't cause the racing to come to a halt. We won't be deploying the red flag as long as we can help it. However, it does mean for our drivers they may have the challenge of needing to get their heads down and figure out exactly how their setups are going to benefit them. And that, of course, is going to be the worry for our drivers. Have they got the right setup on the car? Because right now they'll want the absolute fastest setup out there. They want to have a dry setup on the car and just be able to absolutely abuse the tyres, abuse the aero and everything in between. But with a little bit of rain on the cards, if you go for a setup like that, the car could be very skittish, even if you do adjust the electronics. Of course, they do have the traction control system, TCS, and also the ABS or anti-lock braking system. However, if you don't run enough rear wing, does that mean the rear of the car becomes incredibly loose and too difficult to control in the wet? But if you do decide to stay on slick tyres and you've got to try and pump temperature into them, but remember, the slower you go in the wet on slick tyres, the less tyre temperature you'll maintain, and the loss of tyre temperature means it only gets harder to drive every corner of every lap, and that is why it is going to be interesting when we do see those mixed conditions. But as we do see Andrew Montine, Roy's Wan around here, And it's been a bit of a challenging season so far for the man who's moved up from Evo into Premier, coming into this season following his brilliance in Season 8. It must be said his late championship charge. Well, right now he is looking quite comfortable out there. And in fact, we do have Benno Blom out of the circuit. Well, that's good to see. He was able to make it to the grid right at short notice, albeit we're not complaining about that. We're more than happy to see the sim racing team Lowlands driver from the Netherlands out there. And as he roars his way around in the Porsche 992, it seems though the house moves all gone well, or at least it's gone well enough for him to get his sim rig set up. And well, absolutely pleased as punch for that, I can promise you that. But as he makes his way around here, he is looking at definitely all fired up. And well, you would be imagining that with him being all fired up, he's going to feel as though this is his time to try and strike. But from him to his teammate Mark de Vries, well, Mark de Vries sets the initial benchmark then at 2:18.376, and already more lap times are coming in, some very fast ones at that. Mark Johnson now for 2:17.639, and well, they have 20 minutes in qualifying, of course, plenty of laps. They've got the best part of 10 flying laps there in order to be able to get their best possible time. But do keep in mind, of course, the fact that with an average lap length here for the fastest drivers of approximately 2 minutes and 16 seconds, if we are able to get down into that, or at least the low 2:17s, we're not going to see the full 10 laps used plus the out laps. So therefore, our drivers will need to be mindful of the fact that they've got to pick the right number of laps. They've got to put the right amount of fuel in the car as well, and also know where they need to change tyres over the distance, because right now this circuit's definitely rubbering in nicely. And well, when we do look to our weather, can we bring it up on the screen? There it is. And as we can see right now, a track temperature at 25 degrees centigrade, ambient at 19 degrees centigrade, but we do have quite a high humidity with a cloud coming over of 67%. It means that the conditions are prime right now, but could they start to get a little bit too humid towards the end of qualifying? We will see. Its humidity, in fact, just dropped a percentage point there, but it does vary over the distance of the circuit. But one that our drivers will be keeping an eye on, indeed their team on the pit walls will be keeping an eye on as well, as we keep our eyes on Mark Johnson here. And well, hold up a second, hold the phone, that's Philip McConaughey, the leading Evo driver there in the OnlyFans machine. He is looking incredibly quick out there, only 2 tenths off the overall pole sitter right now, an Evo provisional pole by the best part of none other than 3 tenths. So he's looking to be quite in control at this time, albeit the next man in terms of the Evo drivers is Jonathan Berry. And well, Jonathan Berry's making a bit of a habit here of being Mr. Second Place if he can't be the man who's leading it out front. And that's not to belittle him, but that's how much pace he's bringing to the table in that Mercedes AMG Evo from 2020. But as he comes out there, 6.3 litres of V8 brutality from that German power plant. And right now he's trying to use all of it there as he roars his way down to Pillon Corner. And well, in a couple of minutes' time, we'll be getting an onboard lap or two with our drivers, ladies and gentlemen, to give you an idea of what it's like to attack the Spa-Francorchamps circuit in full anger. But from the angle of drivers making the way around right now to what will be the pleasantries of further on down, well, we do have a few surprises at the moment, including no lap set so far for this man. Third place in the Premier Championship, Matthias Smolny, but still taking his time here. And just because he's a bit of a way down at the moment doesn't mean he needs to get a lap on the board immediately. And we have seen some magic from drivers, whether they've left it until very late in the qualifying session to start setting their laps, and then suddenly they've really pulled some magic out the bag. What's also quite interesting, we have got the most populated grid of the season so far for Split B, ladies and gents. We had 60 drivers sign up at the start of the season, and they are still all part of the series. Indeed, they do vary from week to week, of course, because naturally the course of life, and that's why drop scores exist. But here today, we do have the best part of 53 drivers on this grid. It is a very crowded Spa-Francorchamps visit, and that is only going to make points even more precious here. And well, I can imagine this is a fan favourite, this circuit. It's a driver favourite as well, and everyone's going to be very eager to try and score as big as humanly possible, because for many drivers, this is their favourite circuit. However, when everybody enjoys the circuit, it means everyone's got to step up a little bit more in order to outperform their rivals. It's the natural discourse. Whereas the less popular circuits on the calendar, those are the circuits that sometimes you see drivers commit to a drop score before they've even turned a lap, and that's where the drivers who either absolutely love the circuit and nobody else enjoys, or alternatively the drivers who are just brave enough to go out there, that's where they can suddenly land a landmark result. But Smolny up to 33rd then with his first lap on the board, hopping his way over the turn 7 apex curve. They're taking a lot of curve, that's just about legal. And as he comes down in towards the large corner, definitely right now the Porsche driver still trying to find the time out there in the Mission R992. But rolling his way on around, well, we look from a driver who's still trying to find a bit of pace to a man who's building up the pace there, albeit new livery on the car for today. That's Nick Stubb in the 169 Mercedes, changing from the more conventional livery that we've typically seen him in. And as he heads across the timeline, let's jump aboard with Stubb for a flying lap. It's making his way down towards turn number 1 as he's just at the provisional fastest lap of the session, braking 100 meters of corner apex at the source. Bury the throttle, load up the preload differential, and on the throttle immediately now as he roars his way on past the old start for this straight, the old Grand Prix straight. But as he makes his way up towards turns 2, 3 and 4, Origin ready on, let's listen in. Full commitment there, flat out through the left into right and over the crest he goes. No backing off here for the Premier driver, and now all the way down the Kemmel Straight, and as he does, you'll see it in the bottom right corner of your screen, building up speed in top gear currently, starting to reach the high speeds, and he will be heading to the break-ins over Lecom at 254 kilometers an hour, all the way down to third gear, right into left here, taking plenty of apex curve on both corners. The Mercedes can do it, and now as he exits through turn number 7, a lovely run there, just a dab of the throttle to settle the car down, then back to full throttle as he exits, braking nice and early, 100 meters from apex at Rivage, let the car roll downhill, but keep it nice and tight because it's completely off camber. Bring it over to the right now for no name corner or X, and as he roars his way through the left-hander, back on the throttle immediately, slightly downhill the corner off camber, so you've got to be careful your throttle inputs, and now heading towards pull and heel, brake as late as possible to open up the corner, braking at the 50-meter board, dab of the brake, get the weight over the nose, didn't quite carry all the momentum he could there, perhaps losing a tenth by not running it completely to the exit curbing, but still nicely in control with stub and in towards the Vantage chicane. Braking 100 meters from apex there, trail braking all the way to the apex to the right-hander, and now straight line to the left-hander, a bit of apex curve to rotate the car around, let the car roll out wide, and now heading in towards Stablo 1, onto the brakes there, nice and early at 150 meter mark, through the right-hander, and in towards the curve to Paul Ferrier or Stablo 2, and as he does here, flat out all the way round, a little bit bouncy there on the exit, tapping the apex curve a little bit shy, and we're heading in towards Blanchimont now. Well, let's just get ready to listen in here as we're going to hear him attack it full speed. An upshift there on entry as he makes his way in as well, just helping to steady the car down. 6th gear all the way through, full throttle, and now onto the brakes here. 150 meters before the braking point, or before the apex, and through the right, in towards the left, and Stubb there absolutely nailing the chicane. Is he going to improve this time around? Well, he is the man to beat, essentially. He does improve in the first sector. Does he improve anywhere else? No, he does not. He is 1.5 tenths off of his previous best, and therefore Nick Stubb right now still trying to find a bit more time, and we reckon he lost a good portion of that time at Puron Corda, just a little bit tight on the exit of turn number 10, and it cost him that momentum he needed to carry a couple of extra kilometers now all the way around down towards Vanges. But still, small mistakes. When you're at the top of the field, it's the small mistakes that matter the most, and we'll continue to push it onwards as we say hello there to Dean Tyler and also Katie Kitty Eves, and we'll hope you're both doing well there, and great to have you tuned in as we do see Dean Tyler cheering on LSR, cheering on the Stang, and also we do have there Katie Eves cheering on Craig Tillerson from Vrano Esports. And speaking of our Ford Mustang out there, we've only got the one from LSR, and it is none other here than Pete Biver as he heads across the line, the man who tamed the American Beast last time out at Fuji to bring home a decent result in the Premier class, it must be said. He enjoyed himself out there, whereas many drivers seem to be struggling in machinery more equipped to deal with the rain. Well, he may have been in one of the slipperier, more boat-like cars out there in terms of the way it went to negotiate the streams of water on the circuit, even when it was drying, but still for Pete, he absolutely loved it out there, no doubt about it, as he roars his way around, currently in 27th. But where does that put him in class, I hear you ask? Well, with just under 8 minutes left in qualifying, that puts him all the way down in 17th place, because Robin Aston has just moved up to 15th in the Premier class, and that's a surprise there. Robin Aston a long way down in qualifying. And we'll get you a bit more of a story on that in a brief moment, as Rob Smith's just gone up behind Piver there to 18th place in Premier on a 2:17.992. Conversely, meanwhile, speaking about Craig Tillerson, the man in the Evo class, where is he out on circuit right now? Well, we are just trying to discern where he is, but I believe in the Acura he's in 10th place in the Evo class. In fact, here is Mr. Tillerson in that wonderful liveried machine for Vrano Academy. And well, right now, the livery that I always like to say makes me think back to the Castrol liveried NSX GT3 of the 2010s here, particularly with Baptiste Briguet racing the car. And well, as he makes his way on down the Camel Straight here, well, right now in 26th place overall. He's looking quite good in this qualifying session, it must be said. A man who's definitely gambled by going to the Acura. The Acura has been abandoned by most of the regular GT3 community for this season, and that is because it's felt as though the Acura has been hit quite hard with the recent balance of performance updates coming into the 2025 Season 3 official iRacing campaign. And well, those are sticking with the Acura feel very comfortable in it, but they do have to work this car quite hard compared to the previous season, where the Acura definitely was one of the go-to cars by comparison, hence its popularity that we did see on the Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship Season 8 grid. But right now, the Acuras are out there giving it the rule. Craig Tillotson being one of them, and in fact the only one of two out there, the other one being Andrew Montine. And well, just to prove the point, Andrew Montine grinding his way to 6th place in the Premier class, or 8th overall currently provisionally. And well, with 6 minutes still left on the clock, can he go any further? Well, we'll have to wait and see as he heads on to another lap here. But he crossed the timeline. He's improved in the first half a lap, no doubt about it, but the second half a lap, he left a bit to be desired out there, and therefore he knows there's time still to be found, but he's not quite finding it at the moment. So he's still got a bit of work to do, but still with the work to do, I think he's going to think to himself here, you know what, let's just see how high we can get inside that top 10, and everything else beyond that is going to be a victory or a little bit of icing on the cake. Because to be inside the top 10 of such a competitive grid, that's always a big positive. But speaking of big positives, well, here is Samuel Clark in the McLaren 720S Evo, and was the number 22 driver, comes out of the final corner. He is the provisional pole sitter in the Evo class. He is looking very fast there, as we say hello to a fan of Mr. Clark, and that is none other than Mac Attack, who says, go on, Sam. And well, right now he's definitely doing a fantastic job here, holding on to provisional pole position in the Evo class over Denny Plager by only, and we'll get this, by only 700. Not even a tenth between the two of them. It is that tight, and over a 4.35 mile circuit with 19 corners. I can tell you one thing, less than a tenth, that is fractional. That is literally one corner being done correctly is the difference between the two. The longer the circuit, the more the time delta is significant in the fact that the tighter the time, it really goes to show you how hard these drivers are working and how closely they are matched. But right now for Clark, he is at the top of the pile of the Evo drivers, and with 5 minutes left, he'll be feeling as though he might be able to get it done. As he roars his way onwards, and Mac Attack there also seeing the surprise to see Mr. Clark in the provisional pole position of the Evo class, and we show you those class positions once again there, just to articulate it. We will switch back to overall right towards the end, and well, speaking of Denny Plager, meanwhile, as we do say hello there to Luc van Gürtel, who is cheering on his fellow countryman, the Dutchman here, on his way onwards. Well, the good news for Denny is he's having a really solid qualifying points. Now, this is definitely one of the big surprises of this season so far, because to be fair, and not to be rude about him, he's not quite been up there in qualifying so far, has Denny Plager, but today he's definitely looking to be a much bigger force to be reckoned with as he makes his way onwards. And well, all the drivers here are riding the way around on the slick tire. We'll remove that from the timing tower for now, because we have got those stable conditions, of course, but if we do start to see changeable conditions, we will bring the tyre compound up just to give you an idea if anybody dares to dream to switch to wet tyres. But as Plager roars his way out towards Lacon and in towards Ravage, well, right now it's looking all up here, and indeed could be on for a season best qualifying points and could be on for a season best performance in the race. We will see. But as he comes towards the end of this lap, he's still got a little bit of way to go. Well, we've got Jonathan Berry, the third place Evo driver right now, a further 900ths behind. And the Michelin R driver here in the Mercedes, definitely showing what it can do. However, can he find just another 10th out there to get himself ahead of Plager? Can he get himself into the top 10 overall? And well, there's the perspective. He's currently 12th overall of everybody. He's only 14 thousandths off of Adam Baker, and then it's a further 59 thousandths or 600ths, in fact, to Andre Montine. So it's not too far out to be inside the top 10 here for Berry, but he's got to dig a little bit deeper if he is going to find it, and that could be the story of many a driver here. If a driver finds a 10th or two, they could suddenly leap up multiple places. Speaking of which, James Bostock, the Premier Championship leader, only 4 points of Dean Sheasby in the championship, 34th with a 2 minutes 17.912. This is not a good look for James Bostock. He's struggling, it seems, in qualifying right now. But he has been the man who's been better under race conditions by comparison with many of the drivers in this class. He's not always been the fastest in qualifying, but he's normally able to work some magic out there. But with 2.5 minutes left on the clock, this is going to be his final qualifying lap. He's not going to get any more laps in after this one, because as soon as the clock strikes 20 minutes, that is it. It's done and dusted. And all the drivers here looking at an average of somewhere between 5 to 7 valid flying laps. And Bostock's definitely within that average. He is currently on his 7th flying lap, but it's just not clicking together for the 166 driver. And well, the man who's yet to score an overall win this season, he'll be hoping for one sooner rather than later, and he has promised us an interview if he does get an overall win. But right now it is looking as though this is going to be a day starting on the back foot. But on the front foot, Mark Johnson, he calls time on qualifying, rolls to a halt, and he currently is the fastest, a 2 minutes 16.561. Nick Stubb, he's making his way up Ixon towards Pearl and Bend. He's still got half a lap to go here, and Stubb right now has not improved in Sector 1, nor has he improved in Sector 2. He's got 2 more sectors to go here, but for Stubb, it may be P2, and that's it, because he is still the best part of a 10th of a Johnson, so he's got to try and find a little bit of time. as Mark De Vries moves up the order into 17th, and we have Adam Baker move back into 8th place now with a personal best. So some time still to be found out there by drivers, but a lot of drivers I think at this point running out of steam. And speaking of running out of steam, another surprise, the man who won in Evo last time out at Fuji, Thiago Reza, the Brazilian driver, really right now nowhere near the top of the pile in the Evo class, 42nd overall, 18th in Evo. Well, it's definitely a topsy-turvy week here, but that's of course what happens when we have multiple different circuits, very different natures from round to round over the course of the season. You are going to see this, but right now Reza and indeed also Robert Savage just in front of him, and Robert Savage has been a very fast driver in previous rounds. These drivers definitely struggling out there, and it's only going to start to really mix things up when we do head to the grid, but we will have to wait and see how that plays out in reality, because even further back, well, we do have Andy Chell making his way on through the Blanchimont corner. He's currently in 32nd or 15th place in Evo. We'll have to wait and see what he can do at the end of this session, albeit this is his last lap, so he rolls his way out of the Bostock chicane in the number 5 Porsche. And what's it going to be here as he heads towards the line? Can he go any faster than what he's previously done? Well, we have seen some improvements there. We've seen McConaughey go up to 8th. He's taken Evo provisional pole on a 217.183. Andy Chell does not improve meanwhile, but we have a new Evo provisional pole sitter, and that's McConaughey. Samuel Clark's not out there, so he won't be able to improve. Denny Ploger heads to the line. Can he squeeze his way back in the provisional pole? He comes across the line. Owen Seward moves to 14th, and Ploger does it at the death of the session, moves up into 8th place, and that's Evo pole for the Dutchman. Qualifying's complete, ladies and gentlemen. Let's head to the grid then and see how they all line up for our one and only race today. So as all of our drivers head to the grid, they line up as follows for round number 4 of the championship. Mark Johnson takes pole position here at Spa-Francorchamps for Split B in Premier and overall. The Axis Sport Ice driver is joined on the front row of the grid by none other than Nick Stubb for Glass Tech Racing, who has another stellar qualifying performance. From them, it's Robin Parnier for Simcoach, who scores his best qualifying performance. Starting third on the grid is the Swede and the Corvette. He'll be in the company of Menno Bloem for Sim Racing Team Lowlands, who is right now absolutely on fire, it would seem, and a great qualifying performance from him. Starting fifth, it will be Luke Bailey for Glass Tech Racing ahead of Klaas Vellum for Penguin Racing Endeavours, and then behind them, starting 7, it will be none other than Dean Sheasby, who's definitely had a good qualifying performance, and the Moonshiners Racing Club driver will be hoping he can move forward from there. Then on Evo pole, right at the close, with only a second left on the clock, he scored the lap to take his first ever Evo pole position. Denny Ploger starts 8th for MJK Sim Racing, well done to him, and that's his first pole position of the season. Philip McConney starts 9th, just behind for Racing League Hub, separated behind the man by the best part of 1.5 tenths. Then we have Adam Baker starting 10th for LS Racing. From your top 10 into 11th on the 6th row of the grid, it's Samuel Clark, the third place Evo driver, the privateer ahead of Andrew Muntean for Axis Simsport Ice. And then we have on row number 7, Jonathan Berry for Mission R powered by Mords, and fellow Evo driver, DXT Motorsports by RA's Owen Seward. Then from them, Scott Koshek starts 15th for Carme GP2 Racing ahead of Steve Rubino for Hobo Racing. And then on row number 9, it's Rob Smith for Flatline Racing ahead of Robin Aston for Carme GP2 Racing, with Mark De Vries for Sim Racing Team Lowlands and Wesley Van Rens for 9 Pegasus Panthera completing your top 20. Outside the top 20, let's not forget about on the 11th row, we have Jordan Maymar, the Evo Championship leader. He starts 7th in the Evo class for Simcast Racing Team UK. A weaker qualifying performance compared to what we've seen so far this season, but then again, he is a race-pace demon. He's in the company of Grant Miller for Phoenix Racing Ready, starts 22nd. On row at number 12, it's Rob Mackay for Dexterous Motorsport Zemix, and he'll be in the company of Daniel Paul for Flatline Racing. Sean Clark starts 25th for Dexterous Motorsport Zemix, and he will be ahead of Ross Norsworthy, with the Simcast Racing Team UK driver being followed up by Oliver Forstrom for Quatermass Motorsport and Austin Graff for Axis Simsport Ice. Then complete your top 30, Martin Kenyon for Axis Simsport Ice ahead of Team Nubish's Ryan Abbott. Starting 31st, it's Craig Tillerson for Verano Academy ahead of Andy Chill for Quatermass Motorsport Bravo. Then James Bostock begins this one on the 17th row of the grid for Carme GP2 Racing ahead of Liam Yaniso, with Pete Piver for LS Racing starting 35th and James Pallett giving him company on the 18th row, 36th for the Racing League Hub driver. 37th, it's John Ludbrook for Carme GP2 Racing ahead of Barry Wenman for Dexterous Motorsport Quem. And then we have George Stone and Matthias Smolny for Mission R powered by Mords and Mission R Esports round off your top 40. On row at number 21, it is going to be Danny Ware for Dexterous Motorsport Zemix ahead of Robert Savage for Mission R Esports. And then we have Telga Reza for 9 Pegasus Panthera, who starts all the way down in 43rd. Not a qualifying points we expected from him. He's got a lot of work to do here today. And he's joined on the 22nd row by Andrew Fellows for Flatline Racing. Matthew Hunter begins this one 45th for Simcast Racing Team UK, ahead of Matt Stace for Flatline Racing. And then we have Eddie Fearbold and Simon Hunt, the Queensland Motorsport driver, rounding off your 24th row. To complete your top 50, it's Ian King for HH Racing and Eduardo Andino for LS Racing, with row number 26 going to Stuart Rice for Blue Sky Esports and Sammy Ariba for Mission R. On row number 27, Rachel Hugh for Blue Sky Esports, head of James Fraser for Moonshiners Racing Club. And then we do see that is the completion of the field, ladies and gentlemen. Fraser, no lap set, and we're with everything set in stone. 54 drivers here today. It is an incredible field of drivers, it must be said, and as they all make the way behind the pace car up towards what will be the bus stop chicane. Next up, Mark Johnson, the two men who locked out the front row, with Johnson being the pole sitter. Well, they've got a bit of a way to go before they do get to the endurance line, but when they do get there, we'll be going green flag racing for round number 4 of the championship, and it is going to be around, not to be forgotten about, over 60 minutes of intense racing action, ladies and gentlemen, as we've got some drivers who gambled to go on the wet tyre, others have not, but we will see what is going to be the plan here, as of course the race will begin when they come out of the source and head towards the endurance start line. And it's lights out and away we go for round number 4 of Split Beach Championship here, as Mark Johnson gets a good start off the line. But as they head in towards the Rouge and Radion, everyone will very quickly have to settle down into one line of stern here as they roar the way up the hill. The blimp camera catches them all in full force as Robin Powney, they're getting a brilliant run. Bit of an escape there from Samuel Clark, but he keeps it together for the best part, and all the field, at least the top 30, have made the way safely on through the Rouge complex. But as they come down towards us, in towards Lacombe, here comes all the field. The best part of over 30,000 horsepower heads onto the brakes, and as it does, Nick Stubb takes the lead. Robin Powney going around the outside as well. Mark Johnson, I think, had an automated slowdown for an off-track coming through a Rouge, and as a result, Robin Powney moves up. Luke Bailey does as well, and Mark Johnson down into 7th place as he battles side by side with Dean Sheasby, who disappears and rematerialises from the ether. But as they all come down, oh no, it's gone wrong in the rear of the picture. Who's that who's ended up sideways? Is that Telga Reza? I think it is, unless I'm mistaken. Or is that Wesley Van Rens? I'm not sure, but what I can tell you is that there's a BMW parked up. I don't think that is Telga Reza who's gone sideways there, and well, as a result, in fact, it's not Telga Reza, my apologies, it is another driver, and we'll have to try and find out who that is, but it's gone wrong for them. But Eddie Fearbold's made his way through, as has Robert Savage and Reza just in front of him, so where some have fallen, others have risen. But one thing to note as well, look in the timer tower, and you'll see you've got a mixture of drivers gambling on starting on the dries versus starting on the wets. They're expecting some rain to come, those who are starting on the wets, and they're hoping that wet weather is going to upset the apple cart. As that is Scott Kostridge being turned sideways. 3 wide does not go into the fantasy chicane at the best of times, and Scott Kostridge in the end coming off the worst of the triplet there. He was battling side by side with Menno Blom and also Steve Rubino, and well, in the end it's gone wrong for Kostridge, but it's worked out for the other two, at least for the time being. But coming on down in towards Stavlo 1, and right now this has definitely been an opening lap, with the second half lap has been more dramatic than the first part of it. That's the way to be expected, as everyone's trying to fight for position before everything settles down. And Andy Chell, who always is an open lap merchant in terms of the fact he's actually able to market his starter's position and exchange it for a much better one, he's already up into 22nd. But hold the phone there, because that's Ross Norsworthy backing off as Rob McKay and Adam Baker go side by side, coming on through Blanchimont Corda, and it's going to be too wide there. As you can see, Norsworthy around the outside of Baker, who backing off there versus McKay. He's going to drop a lot of places. Andy Chell moves forward again. He looks for another move to Chell. He's not had enough here. He's not had his fill. As he comes out of the final corner, he's up into 18th place, and Chell is absolutely flying here, and indeed he's one of the biggest gainers since the start of the race. But after one lap turned, Nick Stubb continues to lead by the best part of 2.5 seconds over Robin Powney. Then you have Klaus Vellen in third, ahead of Luke Bailey by only half a second. Philip McConaughey fifth. He's your Evo leader, ahead of Jonathan Berry by 3.5 seconds, with Samuel Clark third of the Evo class behind him. Mark Johnson starting on pole. He's fallen all the way down to 8th place with Dean Sheasby for close company, and then you've got Owen Stewart round off the top 10, with best the rest in 11th being Denny Ploger, and well, Ploger, who absolutely scored a lightning quick Evo pole position right at the end, now finds himself being contested by multiple drivers, and he's going to have the best part here of 2 premiers around him, and that is going to be moves being made by Rob Smith in particular and Jordan Maymar, and in the end Ploger just backs out, and Steve Rubino now closes up behind him as Owen Stewart's gone around, or has he? Yes, no, he has, yes he has, and Owen Stewart has gone completely round there. Remember Lacombe, and he tries to get turned back on, it goes backwards, and the whole field makes its way through. Small tap there from the flat flatline racing Porsche, and what I believe stewards had to be towed to the pitch due to the damage picked up as a result with spin and that subsequent contact. And that's a nightmare moment for Owen Stewart, and well, Stewart, who was looking razor sharp and quick, it's all suddenly very quickly gone to the pit lane, and well, it's still going on further behind. So we've got 2 by 2 coming down in towards Expend. It's not a formation up, I can promise you, ladies and gentlemen, they're not doing it just for the show. They're all battling for positions right now, and well, this is the fight for 21st between Adam Baker, Scott Kostrich, Craig Tillotson, Andrew Montine, and Barry Wenman. They're all going for it, and we can see there Montine backing off as he runs a little bit wide through Pawn Bend, and that is going to enable what is none other than Andrew Fellows to come through. But hold up a second, Ross Norsworthy's gone out wide there. He's gone into the gravel at Pawn Bend. The man who was getting some places in the Premier class has suddenly fallen all the way backwards, and well, there's a move being made by Sammy Ariba, attempted on Ian King, but King's able to keep him behind there as we try to get some idea of where everybody is out there. But as Eduardo and Dino battling with Martin Kenyon, Kenyon's had a slow start as well in the Audi R8 Evo 2, dropping all the way back to 39th. He's trying to make some progress, and Matthias Smolny there goes up the inside, and there's rain! And there's rain on our camera there coming into Stavlo 1, and will those who started on the wet tyre, they'll be thinking it was the right call, but was it? Because of course they've lost a lot of pace in the early stage of the race, but now if the circuit gets wet enough, that wet tyre will come alive and the slicks will struggle. But right now you can see here it's battle side by side, and that's why Denny Ploger's dropped so far down the order, because he started on the wet, not the dry tyre, so he's gone for the investment, which is the wet will come on as soon as that rain arrives. But you can see here all the drivers treading over each other's toes, and Denny Ploger really being the catalyst that's kicked this off as they go on to a third lap of racing here with Ryan Abbott and Mark Johnson together, and well, they're fighting over 12th place overall, as Johnson in the end is elbowed a little bit by Austin Graff there, and Graff picking his way through. Johnson started on the wet, that's why he's had such a slow start by comparison. So a lot of drivers here who decided to start on the wet haven't qualified so well, they're now finding out the consequences of that, and they're hoping they're not going to pay the price. We've got no rain coming down on the opening half of the lap, at least for Uruge through to Radion on the Kemmel Straight. Where will the rain be this time around? As Denny Ploger battling side by side with Mark Johnson, the 2 wet runners here having a drag race, and behind Liam Yaniso trying to make it 3 wide. Yaniso on the left of your pitch down the BMW M4. You've got Johnson on the right, and then being covered up by Denny Ploger, and up the inside of Johnson goes Scott Kostrich in the car made GP2 Porsche machine. Well, in fact, that's the McLaren, and as he heads through the right-hander, well, it is going to be another place gained there by Scott Kostrich, so the rain definitely falling now, albeit we can see here we come down towards the Raj corner. There's a little bit of rain, but not that much, and that is what's making this so tricky right now for the wet runners, because there's not enough rain to go around, and on their mind it is going to be a struggle because that wet tyre is not being cooled down enough to really grip up. Dean Sheasby, well, he decided to start on the wet as well. He's battling an uphill battle. He's only lost 5 places so far. He's the least of the losers of the wet tyre compound. Indeed, he's finding a way to make it work in that BMW M4. But remember, every lap that wet tyre is run at an overheating temperature, it is being corroded more and more. It is being turned into a slick. And by the time he pushes it so hard, if it becomes a slick when the rain really does start to fall, then it will be the same as running on a really worn down slick tyre, i.e. the dry tyre. So therefore for Sheasby, if he is pushing hard, I suspect he's taking all the life out of that tyre to keep this pace up, and in return he's going to pay a penalty at some point, as we are starting to see a little bit of spray emerge from the rear of the cars going through Stavlo 2, and that's a sign we might be starting now to get enough rain to warrant what would be the switch to the wet tyre. Nick Stubb is into the pits. I look out my Conte booth window. He's coming in from the lead of this race. However, everybody else is staying out there at the moment, so nobody else wilting to the pressure of a few drops of rain in their eyes. Well, this is definitely going to add some intrigue to the mix, because Stubb, I think, has seen the writing on the wall, which is there's too much rain coming. He needs to get off of the dry tyre. But here we can see the battle between Yaniso and Sheasby here still under a lot of pressure. The Moonshiners Racing Club BMW was on the inside there, the second part of the chicane, and Yaniso going around the outside, so you can see the wet tyre is not active as of yet. It's still struggling, and we're going to see Scott Kostrich also make quick work of Sheasby, or is he coming into La Source? Well, Sheasby's going to defend as hard as possible on the inside, but he's going to outbrake himself there into the hairpin, and Scott Kostrich gets through, and this is the sign of that wet tyre. It's just not coming into its element, but we've got other drivers who are wilting under the pressure of the slick tyre to come into the pits to go to the wet. We've got Andrew Fellows in, we've also got Steve Rubino, Alston Graff, and also Barry Wenman, so a few drivers definitely right now, and they've perhaps got nothing to lose by making the switch over, and they've got everything to gain versus those who are too stubborn to switch the strategy. Well, it's definitely getting interesting, and we are seeing as a result of this as what a lot of Evo drivers who decide to start on the wet tyre And Sonny picking up places, and well, one of those being none other than Denny Ploger, who started on pole, of course, but he is now starting to get back in the fight a little bit as he fights over Eddie Theobald. Albeit Theobald going around the outside there, so Ploger still not finding enough at the moment, but he is ahead of Mark Johnson, interestingly. So therefore, the Dutchman finding something that the Premier Pole sitter could not find on the wet time, that McLaren. And there's a sign there, so to be certain, the fact that for some, the wet time might be starting to get switched on a little bit more. One other element that are going to come into this as well is the fact that fuel saving will become quite critical for the wet runners here, because of the fact they'll feel more comfortable in this tyre the more rain that falls. There'll be no rain falling there for a brief moment, again coming into a virage corner. We do have that empty patch. Ross Nors, where we up the inside of Andrew Montine. Montine out breaks himself there, coming down into a virage bend on the wet tyre no less as well. So struggling out there in that Acura NSX Evo 22. It's a struggle for the wet runners just as much as it is the dry runners. And Stuart Rice in all this gains 24 places so far. The Blue Sky Esports drivers had a phenomenal start, albeit he's going to have the inside of Wesley Van Rens there, the man who was sideways early on. Many of you may remember, we were wondering what who was in that BMW that had been turned sideways, coming out to turn number 7 at Malmedy. And oh no, it's gone around! It goes all the way around! It's a 180-degree spin! Can he get it stopped before it rolls backwards onto the racing line? Yes, he can. And Stuart Rice just taking a little bit too much speed and dipping that rear right tyre towards the white exit line. And well, Rice in the end goes round, but thankfully it's just him. And well, it's unfortunate for him, of course, but it does mean right now he's able to get himself back up to speed with no damage to the car, just a little bit of damage to his pace and mentality. As we've also got there off the road, that's Sammy Ariba into the gravel coming through the Fangers chicane. So drivers are starting to go off, and these are, I believe, dry runners. Yes, they are. Both of them are dry runners. It does seem as though the slick tyre now is starting to struggle a little bit if you can't pump the temperature in. And in fact, we've got Velen into the pits, Pioneer into the pits, Philip McConney, they're all coming in. There's Pete Piver parked up. He's parked up on the run out of Stavilo 1 in the Ford Mustang. He started on the dryers as well. We've also got there Barry Wenman struggling along. They're all struggling, the slick runners, and that's going to suddenly mean that Liam Yaniso, who makes his way out of La Source, he's still going on the slick tyre at the moment with Dean Sheasby, the man who started on the wet. Well, we were writing him off a little bit early on, saying he was struggling, but right now the use of the wet tyre is very quickly coming back into its element. This is absolute chaos here, and well, the rain now is starting to fall even more, albeit we have periods where it's not falling on circuit, and then suddenly we see it here on our cameras, and it does mean that those who started the wet tyre, so long as they can keep it now stable, given the fact they will have overheated it in the early stage of the race, for those who started it at least, they might now be able to retake the lead positions and with it open up a bit of a gap to all the drivers who started on the slick and have had to go to the wet. They've been forced onto it. We've got there Eddie Theobald. He's practically parked on the... Oh no, he's parked on the apex there of Radion. Everyone comes on through. Can he get it off the road? Yes, he can. And well, that's Blind Summit there. Anyone who comes up the hill, they're all struggling up the hill. And well, it is absolute madness at the moment. We've got a couple of drivers running wide. They're coming out of what is Radion and practically going to the pit exit line. So the rain's out making it absolutely chaotic out there at the moment. And we'll have to wait to see how the big shuffle occurs. Martin Kenyon in all this has moved up into 12th place. The Audi R8 driver, who was saying earlier seemed to be struggling, well, that was because he was on the wet. Robin Pioneer there's got no grip because he's recently gone to the wet tyre, so Martin Kenyon now has an opportunity to attack, and we jump on board here, and that's Kenyon. You can see making his way around immediately. He's got all the grip in the world. Oh, there's contact between himself and Pioneer. Pioneer goes round, just misses the rear of George Stone's car, and well, Kenyon covered across there with Stone struggling on the dry tyre, and I think there's going to be words between the two drivers after the race as that McConney's McLaren going sideways. Oh, goodness me, it's all dramatic. They're all going off the road. All those are trying to stay out there. Alternatively, even if they've gone into the wet tyre, there's no grip out there for those who've gone to the wet. It's absolute chaos here at Spa-Francorchamps, ladies and gentlemen. And we're not even 12 minutes into the race, let alone the remaining 48 minutes. This is definitely going to be a race, I think, now where everything could go one way, then the other in very short order. Well, my goodness. And in all of this, Andy Chell is your Evo class leader. He's found his way through, but makes contact there, or does he? I'm not quite sure, but he parks the car and pulls aside from the Penguin machine that's gone very sideways. And well, that is Klaas Vellen who's gone around. I don't know if there's contact between the two of them. The camera angle suggested there might have been a tap, but otherwise Vellen on that outside line just pushing too hard, and well, the car coming loose on him. We'll have to try and get a replay of that when we can. We've got a few replays queued up with regards to incidents that have happened since the start of the race. And well, James Fraser, who started all the way at the back of the lead, started 54th. The Moonshiners Racing Club driver. He's picking his way through the field. Just hold up a second. That's into the barrier. That is George Stone. Stone's got around again, and he's on the slick tyre. Surely Stone's race right now is going to be practically parts there, as we also do have one of our Quatermass Porsches missing the front bumpers just gone on by. Well, absolutely goodness me. And from all that, Liam Yaniso's into the pit lane, so Dean Sheasby takes the lead of this race. And my good Lord, he's got an 11-second gap here. He's having to wrestle the car up the hill through Rouge into Radion, but right now he's keeping it just about pointed in a straight line. Mark Johnston's a little bit further back, and then we'll have Mark De Vries suddenly find himself in third place. Well, how about that, ladies and gentlemen? It is absolute chaos, and in all the chaos, where on earth has Andy Chell gone? Andy Chell's in the wall. Where's that? Is that coming out of Blanchemont to Bostock? I think it is, and we do have a camera angle that shows it. Yes, that's on the exit of Blanchemont. Chell, who was leading Evo and running away with it, suddenly finds himself on the barrier. He's going to try and get the car turned around, but that's a difficult place to recover from. That will be a swamp there on that patch of grass. He is just about able to get it rolling and back in the straight line, but Chell's going to be crawling to the pit lane, and well, Chell was on the slick tyre as well. We thought he was on the wet. No, he was on the slick tyre. We had to correct ourselves for something we said earlier on. He was looking in control, and well, it's all gone backwards there for Andy Chell. But how exactly did it go backwards, I hear you ask? Well, here's a replay to explain, because it was only moments ago, ladies and gentlemen, where it all went wrong for Andy Chell. Well, in fact, this was Andy Chell on the recovery drive. Where exactly did it go wrong to begin with? Here we go. This is the replay, and where it was coming through Blanchemont corner, runs out to the exit curb, and at this point, slick tyre, puddles of water forming, tries to get the power down. The rear's gone. He's got nowhere to go, and just slowly rolling to the barrier and grinding along it. But thankfully, able to get it stopped nice and gradually, so not a big impact, but still definitely has got to come into the pits with the damage picked up on the car. But as we return to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen, with all of this, it's definitely separated out the field, but it's completely shaken the field up as well. It's almost the equivalent of, oh, goodness me, I was going to say it's all shaken up and then give you a metaphor, but right now there's no metaphor that can compensate Ian King's McLaren being into the barrier at Bourne, and well, that was going down to the brakes. He's still on the slick tyre as well. He is the only driver out there trying to struggle on the dry tyre. Everybody else who's on the slick has gone to the wet or is in the pit lane undergoing the change, but well, for Ian King, he's been trying to keep it together. And hold up, that is Grant Miller going very sideways. And what did we say earlier on in the broadcast? Walter and Grant Miller do not seem to mix very well. And even though he's on the right tyre, as that's Ian King going on deep as well. And well, the McLaren drivers here in the Premier and also the Evo classes, they're struggling. Everybody seems to be struggling. And Sonny, in all of this, in all the chaos, in all the confusion, trying to piece it all together, James Fraser, who started at the very back of the Evo class in 25th place, he's now leading the Evo class, ladies and gentlemen. He started on the wet tyre. He's found his way through. Philip McConaughey started on the dry tyre, it should be pointed out. McConaughey's behind him, so good job on McConaughey to react well on the strategy. But James Fraser right now has gambled on the strategy, and from the back of the field, he is picking up the pieces at no rate other than the best rate of them all, because he heads down here towards the Bostock chicane. We briefly did see their class Vella making the move on James Bostock in towards the Bostock chicane and getting it off successfully, but that is going to be moves being made there by Fraser and McConaughey on Mother Drives, who's a lap down. But that's your Evo top two right now. They come across the line, and then Grant Miller a further 2.5 seconds back in a McLaren that definitely is right now trying just to keep it pointed in a straight line. And I think at this point, well, hopefully things are going to calm down for a very brief moment, as Rob Mackay there says it's not going to calm down. He's gone around on the exit of Blanchemont corner, but thankfully parked in the middle of the road and very clear to everyone coming on through. So he's got the car turned around and he rolls it onto the grass there. He's going to let Wesley Van Rens through, and Rob Smith will go around the outside of him there. So Mackay just trying to get himself back to grips with the conditions. But it will be a swap of positions there. Mackay drops down to 17th in the Premier class and 26th overall as they head across that line. But that's the opening quarter of the race complete, and well, we have had so much happen over the opening quarter of this race, no doubt about it. But what can we now discern with regards to all these moments that we have seen? Well, we do have a few incidents that occurred right at the start of the race. Can we get some replays of those incidents? I think we will be able to. And well, here is what happened on the start of the race between several drivers, and we did have what was a big moment for Wesley Van Rens right at the start, if my memory serves me correctly, and this was it on the open lap for Wesley Van Rens. Now this was coming through Les Combes in dry conditions at the time, made his way in towards turn number 7, side by side there, while the Kame GP2 machines gets hooked on it and both drives to the barrier, and that's when we saw as he ran around parts there. We couldn't quite see the Kame GP2 Porsche stuck with it, however, and well, not quite sure who that was. Was that Robin Aston potentially there? We would have to try and see, but that's what happened to Van Rens. They got hooked on each other. What we also had a bit later on, John Ludbrook had this happen to him on lap number 2, and well, this was where it went all wrong for so many drivers, my good lord. And 173 just going wrong and collecting John Ludbrook, as well, Oliver Forstrom got it wrong only moments beforehand, and well, it seems like it was a bit of a disaster zone for Quatermass Motorsport, and trying to see which of the Porsches that was. Couldn't quite see it, however, but definitely John Ludbrook there having a nightmare moment and being turned around. But as he then got himself back up to speed, we had this happen to Sean Clark on lap number 2. And this was coming up into Uruj and Radion as well. What went wrong for Clark then as he came over the rise? Rear of the car let go there. You can see it starting to come loose and just straight to the barrier. No other way to it. We also had this happen to Ross Norsworthy on lap number 2. And this was coming down in towards Pullman Bend. Side by side he battled, and as he made his way out the corner, a tap there with the number 5. That was with Andy Chell. So Chell went very sideways, and Ross Norsworthy to the barrier. Small tap to the barrier, mostly in the gravel there. So a bruise to the mentality, not the car per se. We also had this happen on lap number 3 to none other than, I do believe, well in fact not on lap number 3, we do have the replay coming up in a brief moment of an incident that happened while the drives further on. This was Stuart Rice on lap number 4 and the Blue Sky Esports drive. This is when the rain started to come on in, and as he made his way out of Pullman Bend, like many, we saw Rice pointing the wrong way, just got the power down, no grip on the rear tyres, and the car rolled around and went backwards there. And well, you were seeing some of the big incidents from the opening couple of laps of the race, ladies and gentlemen, but let's return to your live racing action. Well, as we do come there to a car parked in the pits, that is none other than Rob Smith, who's taken a bit of a static moment there to have work done to the car. And we'll do see the question from Danny Elliott there, asking the question of any clips of what happened to Clark, as in Samuel Clark. And well, we will try and discern. I believe there was an incident for Samuel Clark on lap number 4. We do have a quick replay to explain that, in fact, and here is how Samuel Clark's race went from good to bad to worse. Well, he's already missed the front bumper, so there's been a bit of a story before that. The rain came down in full, car just ran deep there, and I think just trying to crawl it around the circuit to get to the pit lane. So that's what he was struggling with. But preceding all this was 2 laps before. On lap number 2, Clark was battling at the time with, I believe, Jovan Berry. Through Blanchimont he went. Oh no, the rear of the car snapping loose to the barrier, and that's how the front bumper came off. So unsettled there with the transfer of weight and momentum as he came off of that tighter line to take the racing line. And Jovan Berry putting pressure on Samuel Clark, and Clark in the end making a vital error at Blanchimont corner. An easy one to make, however, and Samuel Clark won't make that one twice. That one you can be certain of. So that explains what happened to Samuel Clark when he was right towards the front of the Evo class. But we're going to stay with your live race now, as our top 3 are separated by the best part of 32 seconds in total. Sheasby, Johnson and De Vries, and then we do have none other than Andre Montine in 4th place here, trying to chase down De Vries, as that's no problem at Danny Elliott. And indeed, if you're tuning in right now, ladies and gentlemen, and you have got any questions what's happened to particular drivers, if there is a story we can find, we'll try and find it for you in amongst all the racing that's going on, because we do appreciate there are a lot of drivers here, and every single one of them deserves their time in the spotlight where we can provide it. But as we say hello to Rob GT, who is cheering on James Fraser, or GT Jimbo, well, as our drivers coming down here right now. Montine close, but not quite close enough, and the car siphoning at him under braking there. Not very stable, accurate at the moment. Indeed, having a really fight, but what we can see is there's no rain falling at the moment. And remember, we did say the weather forecast was we will have bands of rain come over the circuit. It was forecasted to be 2 bands of rain to arrive, one early on in the race and one much later on. And this is now going to turn things the other way around, because we have quite a bit of water on the circuit that is drying. And the problem is, of course, you can see the spray on these cars at the moment. That is enough spray for there to be wet tyres and indeed to cool the tyre down. But once that spray profile starts to drop, what you'll see is that we're starting to head towards drying conditions, and then these wet tyres start to get warm. So our drivers will start running off the racing line, and not because it's the faster line, but it's to cool the wet tyre down to keep it alive, to try and get them to the next band of rain if it arrives. Remember, the forecast is a forecast, it's a prediction, it is not what is necessarily going to happen. So therefore, those who are on the wet tyres, practically everyone will be hoping we are going to see more rain, because otherwise they may have to make the uncomfortable decision to go to a slick tyre only then to have to switch back to a wet tyre later on in the race. And the less pit stops you can do, given the fact we're running the full endurance pit lane as well, the better, because the endurance pit lane will cost you the best part of a minute end to end. That's without factoring the duration for your pit stop. But as we see Scott Cottridge having a bit of a slow run. In fact, that's missing a rear bumper. It's missing a rear wing, that McLaren for Carme GP2. I'm not quite sure how it's got to that point. I suspect that's where he's had one of the spin rounds from earlier on that we did catch. But what we can see is that Targa Reza and also John Ludbrook picking the way past. And Cottridge just trying to hold on there. He doesn't want to come into the pit lane if he can help it. But we'll have to see whether he can help it or whether he's going to be helped into the pit lane by any further trouble. But our drivers here all right now keeping it cool, and the battles have definitely gone quiet here as we come towards the end of the 23rd minute of racing. But goodness me, what a crazy opening 23 minutes, aided massively by the interchangeable conditions. And all the drivers right now, credit where it's due to all of them, even those who started on the wrong strategy, all of them doing a fantastic job of trying to piece it together. But right now, two drivers are doing a brilliant job of potentially battling. Mark De Vries for Sim Racing Team Lowlands keeping Andrew Montine behind as we briefly lose Mark De Vries and we regain him from the metaphorical internet ether. And well, it was De Vries getting a little bit under pressure from Montine coming through the middle section of the circuit, but now on the run they go in towards Blanchimont. And what we can see here, it is going to be a bit of stabilising of the run of the two drivers, in the fact that coming through the fast left-hander, there's only going to be one line here, and there's not really going to be an opportunity for a move, although Montine will try to get closer here. As we do look at the past positions on the time town, Montine thinking about it, but I think he's too far back to potentially go for the lunge, and it is way too risky this early on the race. Really, that lunge is something you do on the final couple of laps if you are going to go for it. So they stay as they are. Steve Rubino, meanwhile, he's starting to pick up a bit of momentum. He's back to his starting position in the Evo class, back up into 6th place in class, and he's chasing down Grant Miller. Indeed, these two, both fans of the Ford Mustang in Season 8, but they've both surrendered the Ford Mustang, but one of them has stayed front engine rear-wheel drive in terms of drivetrain, and that's Rubino in the BMW M4. Grant Miller, meanwhile, switching to mid-engine rear-wheel drive in the McLaren, and both of them going to these cars because it suits them and they're enjoying it. And Rubino right now close. Can he find a way in here? We will see. As he's going to look all the way around the outside. Miller goes defensive there. You can see behind we've had an off-track. That's Philip McConaughey, who wasn't too far at the back of this battle, but he's run wide out of Blanchimont Bend. And Austin Graff is on the back of this right now. And Graff, in that Ferrari 296, is looking ferociously fast, it must be said. And, well, those prancing horses definitely trying to deliver right now with the 6-cylinder engine as he heads in towards the opening corner. You can see they're looking to the inside. That's to get rid of some of the spray, but also to help cool the tyres down. And when we say get rid of the spray in terms of remove the visible spray coming off the back of Rubino's car. And in fact, it's worked out there because Graff, despite being on a much tighter entry line, closing that gap down, he's got more comfort in the car as he heads onwards towards Origin Radium. But what you can see here as we ride on board, how difficult it is to actually see the circuit, and that is from an adjacent camera, not the cockpit perspective, as he goes around the outside on the exit curb. That's going to be very slippery, but Graff's going to do it. He's going to go for it here. He's going to be brave, and now it's going to be a drag race here, and we know this Ferrari very fast in terms of its top speed, but takes a long time to get there. The BMW, meanwhile, faster straight line, it takes less time to get there, but Rubino's poor run through Origin to Radion gives Austin Graff the ability to get to 5th place. In Evo, a brave move there from the Ferrari driver, and Austin Graff is showing that Ferrari has got some legs. And, well, can he now take on Grant Miller? That we will find out as he heads down towards Ravage this time. But Austin Graff, the confidence is starting to come forward, and with that confidence, he is lapping quicker and quicker. And, in fact, to put you in the frame of mind, that last lap from Austin Graff, a 2-minute 41.55, that is the fastest of any Evo driver by 2 seconds. Austin Graff in these conditions is flying at the moment in the Evo class, and look at the body language. That's confidence. That is Austin Graff saying, right, I know I've got the speed here. I've got to try and line this up. As Miller goes round, and Graff has to take a base of action, and runs out into the runoff area, used it well, and well, further back, as Steve Rubino avoids the wayward McLaren. You can see Jonathan Berry trying to keep Wesley Van Rens behind, as Philip McConaughey's trying to break away from him. Albeit they go a bit deep. Craig Tillotson there running out wide. Tillotson is a lap down on these guys, so therefore he will be expected to hold his racing line. He's not to make it overly easy for him. He doesn't just have to slam on the brakes and get out the way. It's the faster drivers or lead lap drivers who are expected to do the hard work and find a safe way past, so long as the driver who is going to be put a lap down, aka Tillotson in this perspective, well, he does make it straightforward in terms of where he's going to be on the circuit, and does exactly that, and Craig being a very fair driver. Further up the order, in the battle for 15th in the in the Evo class. Matthew Hunter making his way on past Eduardo Andino's going very slow there. Andino missing a front bumper, in fact. I think Andino's had a bit of a moment, although I can't quite tell you how he's managed to lose the front bumper. We might be able to get a replay of what's happened there to the LS Racing McLaren in short course. But it definitely is going a bit backwards there for the number 17. And we'll hold on to 16th in class at the moment. Won't want to fall any further if he can help it. But coming back to the Philip McConaughey battle in the OnlyFans McLaren. And well, that is going to be Jonathan Berry taking a quick look up the inside into the Bostock chicane with Wesley Van Rens queuing up behind. And then we do see a little bit further back Ryan Abbott's there in the very colourful BMW. Well, he's not too far off either, but he'll want to clear Craig Tillotson before he gets into that battle. Down the start finish straight they come, and well, it will be after this lap they'll reach the halfway point. And we'll keep in mind as well, fuel tanks are a big question here because they are now not using as much fuel as they would in drying conditions, but the fuel tank allowance will not be adjusted based on weather conditions. The point being they will be able to go longer in this race, but we are still expecting that fuel stops will be required. So this is definitely a race where it's going to be the survival of who can get to the next wet weather band if it is going to arrive. Of course, they will have team principals on the pit walls doing the analysis, trying to look at the weather and understand what's coming. But right now, the only thing that's coming is Jonathan Berry in a Mercedes, and he's going to look for a move around the outside here as they head down towards down towards Lake Com, and it is going to be a smooth roof versus Philip McConaughey, and Jonathan Berry there moves up into 7th place, or does he? Just about stops it in time, and in 7th place in Evo does Berry go ahead of McConaughey, and Wesley Van Rens still watching. This is the Premier driver, albeit remember of course championship winner from season 8 in the Evo class and moving up to Premier. But now I think looking at these Evo drivers in front of him and thinking, why can't I be a part of that battle? But still, season 8 where he was the king of the battles in the Evo class, no doubt about it. But from everything that's playing out there, we now come back to 3rd place overall and in the Premier class. And more importantly, because this is Mark de Vries, he's been keeping Andre Montine behind him for some time. More relevantly, Nick Stubb, he is matching the pace of none other than Martin Kenyon behind him. 2:39 39. The drives in front of him, 2:43 43. Dean Sheasby, the race leader, 2:38 38. The point you may be wondering we're trying to make here is the fact that Stubb is very fast at the moment compared to the cars in front of him, and therefore, in theory, he should have an opportunity to try and go for some moves in short order as we ride on board the bumper camera of the Glass Tech Racing Mercedes, and it gets very close! Ooh, goodness me! And if there was contact, well, that would have sent Andrew Montine around. I don't think there was, but I think Montine might have looked at his rearview mirror and thought, okay, it must have been millimetres, if less than that, nanometres even, from the contact, almost taking the camera off the front of the car for Glass Tech Racing. And well, as they make their way up the hill, you can see Montine struggling up the hill, but meanwhile this Mercedes is absolutely flying up there as he heads up towards the Kemmel Straight. But Mark de Vries now under pressure, and the battle for 3rd place overall in Premier, I think it's going to be Montine and de Vries this time around. De Vries going to look around the out, he's going to defend to the inside. Montine meanwhile looking all the way around the outside and the Acura. Can he get to the inside of turn number 6? Yes he can. It's a smooth move there, but they're going to make contact with each other. That pushes out de Vries wide. Stubb comes on through, the door's open, and Nick Stubb moves up into 4th place. A key move there, and he's able to get one ticked off, but now he's got to try and get the next driver ticked off the list, and that will be Andrew Montine, who I think is now starting to find a little bit of momentum out there. And in fact, that last lap, we suddenly saw 2:38 from both Montine and also de Vries. So they are finding the time, it's just when they can find it. It does seem as though Nick Stubb, by comparison, switched on a little bit faster, but then again, we do have the question of when did drivers go to that wet tyre, and that will always serve to slightly change up when the fastest laps come in from them. But hold up a second, that's Wesley Van Rens going around. You don't peer it around what is a Rouge onto Radion, but he's done exactly that. And as he goes for a spin and in and gets it back together, well, that was definitely a bit of a hazardous moment there for Wesley Van Rens. I don't know how he managed to achieve that, ladies and gentlemen, my good lord, but that definitely was a bit of a hair raiser. Can we get a potential replay of how he went on around? We might be able to, albeit we'll have to see what we can do. And well, as he makes his way onwards, I don't think we will be able to get a replay of that, unfortunately. We haven't got the footage that has come up as yet, but if we can get it, we will, ladies and gentlemen. But Wesley Van Rens there definitely having a spin, a surprise one at that. But that BMW M4 right now seems to be all back together, albeit I can imagine his heart will be beating his chest a bit more aggressively than it normally would. But Van Ren's at least getting some control back over the car. And well, we've definitely had quite a few retirements in this race. We have lost so far James Pallett, Sean Clark, Owen Seward, Adam Baker, Robin Aston, Stuart Wright, Matthias Smolny, Simon Hunt, Andrew Fellows, and Eddie Theobald. Hold up, what's happening there? There's a car parked up. Is that Jonathan Berry? Yes, that is Jonathan Berry parked up there. And Berry's gone around at X Bend. I looked down just to see who the retirement list is, and suddenly we find Berry pointing in the wrong direction. How did that happen? Well, here's a replay to explain. Now, this was coming out of Rivage Corner. He just got ahead of Grant Miller off camera, went into Expend through left-hander, and the rear of the car just came around and loose on him there. And well, looking as though perhaps went a little bit deeper into the corner and went for a downshift, and the rear of the car snapping loose with the overspinning of the rear tyres. But a very odd instant there, and Jonathan Berry, I think, just perhaps pushing his luck a little bit too much. Will be a very fast driver, no doubt about it, but thankfully able to get himself back pointing in the right direction quicker than most, as Andy Chell there up the inside of Sammy Arriva. That's coming out of turn number 7 as we come back to your live pictures, and that's the fight for 12th place in Evo happening right on our screen. And well, as it does so, we have had a bit of other drama because Jordan Maymar's had a bit of a moment at La Source Bend. I believe he's lost a position to Klaas Vellen. I think these two have had a bit of a coming together, in fact, and that's enabled Liam Ianiso to get ahead of the pair. Can we see what happened between them? Yes, we can, and here is the quick replay to explain. Now, it was at the time Klaas Vellen versus Jordan Maymar. Maymar was ahead, so Wellen pulled to the inside, went for it under braking. I don't think Wellen expected it to work out the way it did, and Maymar and then went to turn in, only to find that both drivers were there. Wellen in the end overextending the corner, I think, not knowing what to do there other than gradually let the car saunter off. I think a bit of a misunderstanding from both drivers there. You can understand Maymar's not too happy about it, and Liam Ianiso just simply said, okay, I'll take it off for both of you. Thank you very much. Bit of a strange one, that. I think there, Klaas Vellen might be looking back at that one afterwards and thinking, okay, perhaps I went for it. The door was definitely open. I think Maymar will be thinking, okay, perhaps could we have done something a bit differently there rather than traded paint and also traded numbers. Still, that's the story of the here and now. And, well, we come on to the live pictures once again. And Wesley Van Rens, after his spin and his theatrics only a couple of laps ago, Erogen Radion, he's had a much better run this time. He's going to go down the outside of Ryan Abbott's down the Kemmel Straight to move back into 16th place overall. And that's going to be a much more straightforward pass compared to some previous passes he's had to make here today. In terms of the tyres, everyone's still in the wet tyre of our runners. We're not seeing anybody dare to dream to go back to the slick tyre, although Grant Miller's into the pit lane. We're keeping an eye on his car because it is being serviced. We'll let you know, ladies and gentlemen. But we are expecting the fuel tanks are going to go a bit deeper. We've also got Andy Chell into the pit lane at this point in time. Rachel Hughes in the pit lane. The car's still being looked at, as is Philip McConaughey's and Barry Wenman. So we've got some drivers there who are having their cars investigated for potential damage. But right now, those who are out on the circuit, they're doing the damage the best possible way. And in all of this, well, this man, Dean Sheasby, is absolutely in a world of his own. 30 seconds. Yes, 3-0 clear of Mark Johnson. And Sheasby is lapping at least half a second a lap faster than the majority of the Premier field. The only driver who is matching him for pace is Nick Stubb in third place. Mark Johnson is at the moment 2 to 3 seconds a lap slower. Here is Mark Johnson to explain the driver, and right now the Axelson Sport Ice driver, well, his race is definitely being put on ice by the pace of Dean Sheasby, and if he doesn't find any pace soon, Nick Stubb is going to be there within the next 2 to 3 laps, we reckon, because right now Stubb is also flying. And, well, I think Sheasby's got more of a gap here than what he needs. In fact, he's got enough of a gap that he could afford to take a bit of a gamble on strategy and still have this work out, given the pace that he's had on the transition from dry to wet and wet to dry. But I think he won't react now until he sees the weather really change time, because we've still got 25 minutes left on the clock or thereabouts. Menno Blam's headed into the pit lane, and, well, in terms of those who have been in the pits, have we had anybody change their tyres? Oh, Grant Miller's come in. He has not changed tyres. He's just come in for fuel. He's still on a set of wets. It's the same for our other driver who came in a bit of a moment ago, Andy Chell. He's done the exact same. He's gone back out there on a set of wet tyres. Menno Blom's also having another set of wet tyres investigated on the car, if not the same set. So nobody wants to go to the slick here. I think they're all too wary of the fact that this circuit definitely is not going to offer grippy enough conditions to use that tyres. We just see in front of Nick Stubb there, lap down driver Stuart Rice. Stubb's going to go to the inside here into the Fandry chicane. Rice will give him the space to operate, and well, in the end they'll get the swap over done nice and easy there. And well, both drivers showing great awareness of each other. But coming from drivers who are exchanging laps to two drivers who are exchanging positions here, this is Ryan Abbott's, Ross Norsworthy and Rob Mackay. They're still fighting as they make the way down the Kemmel Straight, and Abbott's holding on to 16th place currently, got 6th place in Evo, but he's got the two Premier drivers behind him, and Norsworthy here trying to go around the outside in the Ferrari 296, and behind Mackay just watching and waiting for a way to get involved, albeit he won't be able to get involved this time, too far back, but as he comes through the chicane and in towards turn number 7, trying to go all the way around the outside there, that's brave to try and do it, goes to the cutback. Abbott slightly unsettled there, but Mackay right now, for all the inventiveness he's showing, there's more rain. And sorry to interrupt the fault, there's the rain we said about, the second band of rain's arriving, so therefore, those is Ian King's gone to the dry tyre. King, who's just gambled of going to slick, he's going to see this when he gets to Raj and think, oh, goodness me, I've gone for the wrong strategy again. And well, I think there might be a few swear words thrown in that, but we're trying to keep this as PG as we can. But right now, the rain's back at Rivage Corner. I think it's going to creep across the circuit as Mackay goes for a dive up the inside there of Abbott. Gets the move done. Abbott's being a little bit obliging there, respecting the fact that Mackay's in a different class. But the drivers enjoying a bit of battle, and Mackay now has got the best part of 1.3 seconds to close up on Norsworthy. But coming back to the Sun Twist, rain is falling. That is a lot of rain falling as they head towards the bottom end of the circuit, and this is definitely now going to shake things up to the core, because anybody who is on a set of wet tyres going towards the end of their life, they will struggle. Anybody who dared to dream to go to the slick, of which I think we've only got one driver who's gone for that strategy, is Rob Mackay into the barrier there, or at least into the gravel coming out to the Fangers chicane. He's gone around, not the way he's waited to go at all. And the rear bumper's hanging loose on that McLaren. That is going to be a car that's coming into the pit lane. I can assure you of that, ladies and gentlemen, that McLaren is going nowhere other than to a fast repair if there's one available. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of work, because that rear bumper is hanging off the back of the car by a thread. And, well, it will be seeing the scrutineer's flag as the bumper comes off. And, well, thankfully, that bumper will just gradually roll off the circuit and de-render from existence. But, indeed, Rob Mackay right now on a car that's definitely had much better days. And that McLaren is not going anywhere but to the repair garage. But from him, we look to Menno Blom, just a bit further up the road. He's bringing John Ludbrook along with him, and they're fighting over 12th place in the Premier class here. These two McLaren drivers Porsche drivers, I should say, right now, just trying to keep their heads down. The Porsche, of course, a very comfortable car in the wet, given its rear engine rear-wheel drive. But it's really been one of those days, say, whereby the comfort factor has been more on the setup of the car and who's brave enough to run out there. As we have got some pit stops now coming. These are strategic pit stops, we believe, for drivers who are leading in the Evo class. In particular, James Fraser is making his way out of the pit lane, heading up the hill by the pit lane exit. And as he does so, he'll be one of the first drivers from the lead of the Evo class to make what is their scheduled fuel stop. All he's done, he's putting a bit of fuel, he hasn't changed any tyres over, he's back on his set of wets, and he's going out there now to the finish to try and bring on home the win. But keep in mind that Denny Plurger is out there at the moment, leading in the Evo class, and Plurger's had a very short pit stop previously. I believe that might be for some repair work on the car, the 4.35 second stationary stop. Well, the point being for Plurger here, a fuel stop will be required, but will it be enough to enable Fraser to come back out ahead, or will Plurger suddenly find a way to leap into lead? We're going to keep an eye on this, because Denny Plurger right now really has been a bit of an underdog story come to fruition at Spa-Francorchamps for that sensational pole lap right at the end of the session, and now really coming back on strong with that gamble to the wet tyre paying off at the start of the race. But coming down into the Bostock chicane, going very deep there. That's why the Ferrari drivers as Plurger into the pit lane, so it won't be long before we do find out whether it will be the Dutchman or whether it be the Briton leading the Evo class all the way into the final stint, presuming this is the conditions we're going to see the race end on. But as we've got Mark Johnson, Andrew Montina, Martin Kenyon all in the pit lane, they're all coming in, and I think the fuel tanks are running dry here, and everyone will be grateful for the fact they've been able to make those fuel tanks go the distance to the second run of rain, because if they hadn't and had to come in, then there would have been the big question mark of do you go to a slick or not, and well, thankfully that question has been resolved for them. But looking at Eduardo and Dino, meanwhile, we're missing the front bumper on that McLaren, that's for certain, but the LS Racing car not losing any enthusiasm, it's just lost its headlights as well. That would be a little bit dangerous, particularly if we do see darkening conditions because of, the cloud layering and also the amount of rain falling. I believe this is relatively light rain that is falling, and well, therefore the headlights will not be as much of a necessity, but definitely right now the number 17 in the Evo class, where it's 11th in class, well, it is looking as though that McLaren fighting onwards. A semi-Reba there, battling with Jonathan Berry, and the Mercedes driver running out wide at Expend, struggling at that corner is Berry, and will lose in 2 places for the price of 1 slide, and well, it's not looking happy is that Mercedes at all as he comes on around. We ride on board then with Berry and the Michelin powered by Maud's driver in these conditions. Nothing seems to be clicking together, and running all the way down in 27th place overall, fighting for 25th. We can see that Andino and also Riva both going deep and going up the inside of Berry here. That is going to be a lap down car trying to make the move on Berry. Who's it going to be? Whether it is a lap down car or not, no, that is Nick Stubb. In fact, your second place driver coming on through. So Stubb trying to pick his way past these three Evo drivers. That's not going to be easy for anybody to do, let alone Nick Stubb. There's a big tank slapper there from Stubb. Just about keeps the point in a straight line as he comes out of the curve to Paul Ferrier or Stavlo too. And well, right now Stubb fighting with the wheel and keeping in mind he is so far back on Sheasby, who's just coming to the pit lane for his what will be his mandated stop, and indeed his only stop of the day. Well, Andino there backs off, and Berry will take the place off of Andino. I think Eduardo Andino only backing off for Stubb, but in the end, where he backed off, Berry just simply said, okay, I'll take that too. Heading in towards the Bostock chicane here, all these drivers right now just tiptoeing the way around. Nobody peels to the pits other than Andino, and I think Eduardo Andino recognising it's time to come on in, given the fact he's losing time, he's losing places. But Sheasby in the pit lane, Nick Stubb in the pit lane, and well, not Nick Stubb in the pit lane, Mark De Vries in the pit lane. Stubb stays out there for now, and well, for Nick Stubb, he will go on to lead a lap of this race, if our prediction's correct, because Sheasby's still in his pit stall, and he will be for some time, so Stubb will make his way there, but surely, when he does come into the pits, presuming he's got to come in, unless he's been able to work some magic with regards to the fuel, and never say never to be fair, we'll add to a very interesting race, as here comes Sheasby leaving his pit stall now and heading up the hill. Well, Nick Stubb and Sheasby is going to be the battle between those two for the victory, but I think Sheasby right now will be hoping that Stubb is due another pit stop, and we will wait and find out whether that is the reality of the situation. Coming back to Mark Johnson and Andrew Montine, these two have been close together for some time. That rain, in fact, has fallen a lot more. I don't think that's light rain. I think that's medium or moderate rain now starting to come down on the circuit. Indeed, we are losing visibility out there as well, and that is due to the severity of the rain, the amount of cloud coverage. So this second band of rain, a lot stronger than the first, and it does mean now we're definitely locked into wet conditions for the remainder of the race. Even if it's the suddenly stopped raining, I don't think we'd clear enough within 17 minutes to mandate a switch to a slick tyre or even a gamble to it, as Mark De Vries is leaving the pit lane as I look out my conservative window. But Johnson versus Montine here, they're still fighting over 6th in the Premier class, and it's going to be Andrew Montine looking all the way around the outside. Johnson decides to cut it nice and deep on the inside there. Montine gets the cut back in terms of momentum, but not ahead. Mark Johnson absolutely nailing that exit, and well, now heading on down towards Eau Rouge. A slight downhill run before it goes completely uphill, and upwards they go. And well, you can see that Andrew Montine having to go off race line to try and cool his tyres down, but Mark Johnson absolutely confident and just keeping all that momentum down the Kemmel Straight. And now it's Andrew Montine's turn. He does seem to be really dialed in through Radion, and well, on the Kemmel Straight here, will he go for the move? My gut feeling says yes, he will. Peels out to the inside down the left of your picture. The Acura of Andrew Montine is going for 6th place in Premier, but in the end Mark Johnson outpaced him to the braking zone, and Montine just doesn't have enough on the straight. Has it all in the corners, particularly those medium to high speed corners, but as soon as he gets on the straight, it's just not there, and Johnson able to hold on for a little bit longer. But with all this happening on, we have had a bit of drama further down the order, including an incident for Menno Blum that seemed to have to be towed to the pit. What exactly happened to the Sim Racing Team Lowlands driver? Here's the replay to explain. Now it's James Fraser running wide in the background, more on that in a brief moment, but coming in towards Blanchimont, and before he got to the corner, went round. I suspect that's where he's touched the white outside liner circuit, the rear right tyre just cutting loose, and well, Menno Blum to the barrier there, and very quickly having to be towed to the pits as a result of that shunt, practically buried in the gravel there and not going anywhere. But we come back to live racing, and that is the Simcast Racing Team UK machine of, I believe, it's a bit further down the order, trying to discern who that is, but stepping aside there, that was Matthew Hunter stepping aside for both Mark Johnson and Andrew Montine as a lap's put on him. So it does seem as though right now our leaders really cutting their way through the back marker field, and strategy being a big part of this. John Ludbrook, meanwhile, battling with Wesley Van Rens to the final spot in the Premier Top 10, and will these two make the way from right into left It's Ludbrook still stuck behind, can't find a way round as we ride aboard the dashboard here of the Carme GP2 Racing 114. And what you can see here, as close as you'd like to be coming out the corners, he's got all the grip, but one thing he hasn't got is the ability to get fully alongside, as Wesley Van Rens makes his BMW incredibly wide. But through Stavlo 2 they go. Van Rens having a monster exit out the corner. Ludbrook practically stumbling on corner exit, and that gap suddenly opened up from 2 tenths to half a second in the space of the one apex. But Ludbrook now, I don't know how he can see anything. On the dashboard camera here, you can't see a thing in the run up towards Blanchemont corner, but he's able to find it. In fact, backs off there knowing he's got no visibility, and I think being smart there is Ludbrook just simply knowing that going into their full tilt when you've got low visibility, that is a recipe for going around or finding the gravel, or even worse, finding a barrier. But Van Rens goes very deep over the apex of the first part of the Bostock chicane. Ludbrook much more composed by comparison, and that will gradually bring the two back together over what will be the run into the next lap. But as they power onwards, looking a bit further down behind them is James Fraser going to make his way back into the lead of the Evo class. That's one of the big questions we have here. And will currently, James Fraser down in 6th place. Fraser, in fact, has fallen a little bit from grace compared to where he was earlier on. But to be fair, he did recently have a pit stop in order to put fuel in the car. So therefore, we would imagine that some of his rivals might be due a pit stop or might be on the verge of a pit stop. And they'll be trying to make those fuel tanks last. But Fraser right now, having had to come into the pit, well, he's got 5 places to try and make up over the remaining race distance if he wants to try and find his way back towards victory. But we will see where he's able to do that or not as he heads on towards the Kemmel Straight. His first target will be Ryan Abbott's, who he has right in front of him in the BMW M4, and that'll be for 5th place in the Evo class here. And well, Fraser close, pulls out of the draft there as Abbott goes as defensive as he can. The spray absolutely huge behind as more rain falls. Abbott's going defensive. Fraser trying to elbow his way around, but that's not going to work. And Abbott simply says, no you don't, I'm just going to withstand the pressure you put on me. But as we look back from the rear, on the back of the number 25 BMW M4 of Abbott's, the Team Noobish machine. Right now, his car parked there. That is Rob Smith looking sideways on the exit of Lacombe. More of that in a moment. Well, Rob Smith being a bit further down the order. In fact, I think a lap down on these guys now. Well, Ryan Abbott's here using what was the single line there and through reverse just to break open a bit more of a gap. But you can see there, Fraser staying close. We're really having to use all the circuit plus those curves, those tricky and treacherous curves, is James Fraser to try and stay in the hunt. Meanwhile, Ryan Abbott seems to have an answer so long as he doesn't make a small mistake. But rolling on down, more rain falling there at Pullen as well. Definitely the rain is falling in little dribs and drabs everywhere you look on the circuit at this time. And James Bostock's into the pit lane now from 4th place overall. And here is Bostock making his way down. He is due a pit stop. And well, that's going to put the fuel in the car to get him to the end of the race. Unscathed on fuel capacity. Well, as he comes out of La Source, at least in the pit lane, he'll relinquish his position to plenty of other drivers out there who are enjoying himself. And speaking of drivers enjoying himself right now, we did say watch out for this man, Austin Graff, because he was lightning quick when the rain really was in full effect in this Ferrari 296, and he is your Evo class leader at the moment by 13.5 seconds over Denny Plager. However, do keep in mind, and the Graff did have a much earlier pit stop compared to some of the other drivers. Denny Plager only recently having pitted to take fuel, so therefore we'll have to see if Graff can get all the way to the end, because that gap has opened up quite some, no doubt about it. But is there another story to be held? Well, from him, we come to James Fraser, who goes around the outside of Ryan Abbott's there to move into 5th place in Evo class. Takes one. Steve Rubino heads into the pit lane, so Fraser will now take on 4th place as well in the Evo class. So this is starting to come back to Fraser little by little. Still 10 minutes on the clock plus a final lap. You can see the reflection there on the start-finish line, the clouds on the track surface. That's how much water is now there on the start-finish line. So definitely erodes any prospect of us seeing a slick tyre towards the end of the race. I think going onto a slick tyre at this point really would be tantamount to disaster. And you've got to feel for Ian King, who had literally gone to the slick as the rain started falling again. And in the end, they've had to retire the car as a result. Some damage picked up. But as we do have Fraser heading up the hill, well, his next target in the Evo class is Jordan Maymar. But Maymar is the best part, I do believe, of 42 seconds ahead. And well, Fraser will know that is a pit stop and then some change in order to be able to try and get back ahead of him. And he'll be hoping that a pit stop is due for Jordan Maymar, also for Denny Plager and Austin Graff. However, we're not quite sure if one is, given the timing of those pit stops. Looking a bit further back, Thiago Reza chasing after Jonathan Berry. These two have definitely had some battles earlier on in the season, but Reza right now, after a dismal qualifying performance, well, he's definitely had a much better race by comparison, up into 12th place in the Evo class, having started 18th, but not where he wants to be after his victory last time out at Fuji. And how a week in a change of circuit completely turns the tables with regards to the situation for drivers. Indeed, week to week, you can't predict who is going to have a good day or a bad day at the office. You can only find out once we're out there. Andrew Martinez into the pit lane as I look out my commentary booth window, as is Jonathan Berry. So some more pit stops being revealed here, and it might be where fuel tanks are just running dry. And I think some drivers at the moment might be trying to tiptoe their way around just to get the fuel tank to register it could do the final lap. Of course, that's a big question as well. The fact they may get the full 60 minutes in, but will they finish the race as well? And it depends on how we squeeze the laps in, as Reza there almost going to the grass, practically straight line his way out of La Source, and went in. I think that was to try and chase some standing water on the circuit, but chasing it a bit aggressively so. A bit of a wobble there coming out of origin to Radion, and in the end that has to be a back off from Luke Bailey. And Bailey having to completely lift out of the throttle, otherwise he would have gone straight into the back of the BMW. And well, Bailey won't be too upset about that, because coming up behind him, well, that is going to be the BMW M4 trying to put itself ahead of the trio, but it's not going to be able to. And Bailey will just simply tuck up the inside there, and well, the number 93 will fall back in amongst them all. Well, that is going to be the 171. That is Liam Yuniso, your third place man, who's on the lead lap. So Yuniso right now, I think he's going to be feeling as though he's been costed time as a result of being behind him, as he's just had a pit stop. But as he makes his way down, well, we need so in third place, and that third place is definitely looking to be in his hands, as around goes the BMW M4 Thiago Reza. And well, the 9 Pegasus Panther driver there having a race. Well, he praised it only months to go, and well, that praise being a bit premature, and the commentator's curse being applied sadly to his race. But here, Liam Yuniso, who really has just snuck his way through the field over the distance and started all the way down in 34th place. Well, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. No doubt about it. But as we do say hello to Barry Wemman there, who says, I tried, have a chest infection, tried to soldier on, but after I missed my pit box, it was all but over. And I'm sorry to hear that, Barry, but credit where it's due to you for pushing on with the chest infection. I hope you do feel better soon. So at the end of the day, even though the racing is fantastic, the most important thing, and I'm sure everybody will agree, is your health, good sir. And I hope you do have a better run into your weekend with regards to your health. We're all here wishing all the best for you. Well, we certainly are here in the commentary booth, no doubt about it. But as our drivers continue towards the end then, 6.5 minutes left on the clock and a lap with it. And well, are there any other twists in the tail? Well, Dean Sheasby has recently come into the pits, I believe, to take his one and only pit stop. Yes, that was only 4 laps to go. Nick Stubb, meanwhile, when did Nick Stubb take his pit stop? Well, Nick Stubbs' pit stop was all the way back on lap number 4, and that was to change up the tyres, but also to put some fuel in the car. Now, can Stubb go the distance? That is an intriguing one, because here is your race leader. He's 18 seconds up the road from Sheasby. Sheasby's now got nothing to lose, technically, other than a second place versus a first place. But the point being, he doesn't have to worry about fuel. Stubb does. If he is, after 4 laps, able to get to the end, that's going to be a lot of fuel saving on this fuel tank. Well, we'll have to find out. We'll see how the lap times go. His last lap for Stubb, a 2-minute 38.35, so practically faster than all the rest of the field, minus, we would presume, Sheasby when Sheasby's running and clearing up to temperature. So, on paper at least, I don't think Stubb is slowing down. The only thing it could be is he knows he's got to come in, and therefore what he's actually effectively doing right now is racing to beat Liam Yuniso on strategy to make sure he gets second place, because Yuniso is 43 seconds behind, and that puts him in prime pit stop strategy territory, as in if Stubb came in at the end of this lap, the two of them will be practically emerging onto the Kemmel Straight side by side if our prediction's correct. So that's how close this is at the moment, and Stubb will need just to keep banging in these laps until he has to come into the pits, or until that checkered flag arises, one of the two. But which one it is, well, he will know, or at least his prediction will be what he knows, and we will find out when we do see it on our screens at the end. 5 minutes left on the clock, and right now most of the battles inside the top 20 have calmed down. Outside the top 20, we've still got some battles to go, including here where's the fight for 26th between the Premier driver Minno Blum, who you can see in the foreground, and Thiago Reza and Philip McConaughey. And McConaughey, who started second place in Evo, this race has definitely not been his race, but right now coming all the way into the left hand of X Bend. He's close, not close enough to look for a move, but I think he's hoping he can make something happen. And well, up from them, they do have behind him Andrew Montine, who is only 5 seconds back. You can see him in the rear of the picture in the Acura, and would like to get involved in this to perhaps pick up a bit more of a consolatory point in the Premier class. But McConaughey still there, and as we jump aboard, looking down over the front, big slide there, very tail happy is the number 69 McLaren. And well, as he heads through that right-hander, you can see that big puddle of water on the inside of both of the curves of the Van chicane. All three drivers getting as close as possible to them to take the optimum line, but not wanting to dip more than the edge of the rim of the tyre in. And once a big slide loose from Minneblum, that is now going to give Targo Reiser an opportunity to get along the inside to stab low too. But do you really want to be that close going through here? Big slide to the pair of them. McConaughey as well struggling. All three drivers here having to practically drift their way through the Stavlo pair in the corners. And as they make the way onwards, well, it is going to be Minneblum who's going to have a shot at this in terms of holding off Thiago Reiser. But Reiser in the end does not go for it coming in towards Blanchimont. He knows too wide there's not going to work out whatsoever. And well, he'll now be thinking about the potential Bostock chicane, but I think he's too far back there. Some wheel spin coming out of Blanchimont, plus also loss of some speed. And Minneblum stays safe for at least the rest of this lap, as they all tiptoe around each other and all put some mental pressure on. Nick Stubb is into the pits, ladies and gentlemen. We thought it was coming. He leaves the pit lane. As he does so, where is Liam Uniso? Well, there is your third place man. He makes his way onwards, and as he does, we look to the blimp camera. Here is Stubb making his way on the pit exit line. Two cars have gone sideways. That's Sammy Reba and Robert Savage, the two teammates from Mission R. Where is Uniso? Well, he comes up the hill. He will have a yellow flag waving, but Stubb has done it. Stubb has come back out in second place, but not by much of a margin. He's only ahead by the best part of about 3.5 seconds. You can see at the head of this camera shot, there's Nick Stubb. At the back of it, Uniso. And Uniso right now will be fuming. He would argue when he came out the pit onto the Kemmel Straight and found himself surrounded by cars that are a lap down fighting, and many of you may remember that, we caught it on camera, he would argue that's where he lost the 3 seconds that would have put him in second place. But that's the way it goes here at Spa-Francorchamps in mixed conditions. When you pit, you've got to come out in clear air. If you don't, you lose all the time. You can see the frustration there, immediately flashing the lights to tell the cars that are lap down, I need you out the way. I'm on the lead lap. I want to go attacking. But these drivers, they've got their right to race as well, and therefore Uniso right now having to pick his way through the blue flags away. But all it tells these drivers in front of him is there is a lead lap car coming on past. Do not be unpredictable. It's not the case like in Formula 1 where they have to completely back off and go off race line intentionally. Uniso's got the hard job here to find his way through, and you can see that in fact the car slides down through Pearl Bend, and right now he's going to push it hard in a car that's definitely got tyre temperature, but has the driver got it tempered down? Well, he's going to go up the inside of Grant Miller there into the Van chicane. He'll pick another one off, but already Stubb is 5 seconds clear here, and I think Stubb right now has been given the grace and the breathing room to hold on to second place, but nobody is going to put a candle to this man, Dean Sheasby, who on his 22nd tour of the circuit under race conditions. Well, the circuit is drying up a little bit again. There's still plenty of water out there. I don't think we're going to have any risk of it being a drying circuit on the final lap, but he will turn at one more lap of the circuit. Another twist in the tail, and Dean Sheasby right now, after his heroics at Fuji in the wet conditions, I think we are going to see back-to-back heroics here from Sheasby with one more lap to go. He may not have started on pole position, but right now he is in pole position to take victory here with 1 lap left on the clock, as Nick Stubb, meanwhile, back in second. He knows all he's got to do is hold on for one more lap, and that runner-up spot will be his. As to what's happening in Evo, well, the prediction that Austin Graf could not get to the end of the race was correct. Denny Ploger has retaken the Evo lead, and the Dutchman right now is gradually heading towards his first Evo class win of the season. But can Ploger do it? Well, we will see. After that surprise pole position, I think anything's possible. Austin Graf, meanwhile, hold up a second. Austin Graf going sideways there. He was being chased by James Fraser, and Graf losing second place in Evo. Ryan Abbott's is still the best part of 12.5 seconds behind, so I don't think Graf's got to worry about losing in fact, losing third place, I should say, not second, because they have Jordan Maymar up the road from them. But Austin Graf there losing his spot on the podium. What exactly happened to Austin Graf? Can we find out? Because that was a surprise and not a welcome one to be certain about. And I think we might be able to. Here's a replay from earlier on. Well, this was exiting the pit lane, so this was Graf and Martin Kenyon making their way upwards. But a bit later on in the lap, can we see Austin Graf getting it wrong? And the answer is yes, we can. This was battling with James Fraser down to Pearl Corner. Takes his natural line. Rear of the car comes rounding him too soon. A bit too much speed on the rear axle and cutting loose there. And James Fraser just picking up the pieces. But we come back to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen, because we are on that final lap and we don't want to miss the checker flag moment. Right now, James Fraser just holding on to third here as he's got one more tour of the circuit to do. Luke Bailey still fighting with Robert Savage and Grant Miller, fighting with two Evo drivers as the Premier driver. I think he's enjoying himself out there, but he knows this is not for points, and at this point, and Jordan Maymar's in the pit lane. He's not been able to get to the end on his fuel tank, so Maymar's going to drop down. So Fraser will now be contesting second place in Evo, and suddenly Austin Graff will be back to third, but will know that he's lost second in Evo as a result of a small mistake. Well, how small mistakes are so punishing, and that's one of the big stories here today, the number of mistakes made by drivers versus those who have not made mistakes. And, well, make no mistake, as Denny Ploger carries on, here is Liam Yaniso, your third place Premier driver overall, and will, barring a bit of a mistimed pit stop, he hasn't put a foot wrong. Neither has Nick Starr, the man in second, who's really used strategy to his advantage to make sure he's going to come home the runner-up today. However, the man who didn't quite do the magic in qualifying, he started 7th, but he started on the wet tyre, and he didn't look back. And for Dean Sheasby, he doesn't need to look back because of the checker flag waves. It's 22 seconds, which he takes victory by, and Dean Sheasby makes it back-to-back wins in the feature races this season. And well done to him, Premier and overall. And then we will have a sizable gap of 21 seconds before we get to your runner-up man in the Mercedes AMG Evo, and will Nick Stubb once again having to settle for the runner-up points, but still a second place. He won't be too upset about that because it's great points to his campaign. He takes second place, and then Liam Yaniso rounds off the Premier overall podium there, an all-German marked podium. He takes home third place on a solid drive. Mark de Vries will then come on through for one of his season best performances. He will take fourth place overall as he tiptoes his way out of the final chicane, gliding to the line, but as he takes the checker flag, who's this? It is none other than Denny Ploger, and after that brilliant surprise pole position, Denny Ploger's done it. He takes victory for the first time this season in the Evo class. Well done to him, the Dutchman, a phenomenal drive, and then it will be the best part of another 21 seconds before we do get to 6th place man. And James Bostock, well, we counted him out earlier on, but in the end, he sprung the surprise on us. He's just been able to stay out of trouble. He's gone under the radar, and he's found his way to get to 6th place as he weaves his way across the line. I think that car's practically out of fuel, but he's going to make it to the end. Well done to James. And then it will be Mark Johnson who's next up, and Johnson, who started all the way on pole position. Well, today, it didn't quite work out the way he wanted it to, and well, for Johnson, it was a struggle in the early stage of the race, having started on the wet tyre, couldn't quite get it to click when the rain came either, and he will settle for 7th, and then we will have a little bit further back behind him and James Fraser, who will come on home soon in order to bring home at 2nd place in the Evo class. And, well, the Moonshiners Racing Club driver will be a little bit gutted he couldn't quite take the class win here today, but I think a 2nd place for him, he'll be smiling at that. The number 2 makes it P2 in the Evo class there. He won't be too complacent, and Austin Graff rounds off the Evo podium there with that mistake. Cost him 2nd place, but still settling for 3rd. Jordan Maymar had to come into the pits for fuel. He finishes 4th in Evo, 10th overall, ahead of Klaas Vellen. And then Ryan Abbott's in 12th place there with not too many more drivers on the lead lap. Behind him will be Ross Norsworthy to come home 13th. Robin Powney at 14th there for Simcoach, ahead of John Ludbrook, who rounds off the top 15. And then we will have Steve Rubino still a little bit further away. Here is the Hobo Racing BMW. He'll take 6th in Evo class today. Some good points there. And then he got the best out of a challenging situation. And you can see the smile there with the flash of lights. He knows he's picked up a good score. And then Daniel Paul will be your penultimate lead lap finisher ahead of Wesley Van Rens. The two share the same real estate on camera. And, well, Van Rens makes his way into the pit lane knowing he can't be demoted from 18th by finishing under pit lane regulations. Daniel Paul will take 17th, 7th in the Evo class, and Wesley Van Rens will be your last lead lap finisher in 18th. But as all the drivers cooling down, Dean Sheasby, whoa! No, he's hit the barrier there, as I think he wanted to celebrate with a donut across the line. And well, the Moonshiners Racing Club team, they're going to be getting the checkbooks out there and saying to Dean, look what you've cost us now. You've done a brilliant race, but all your winners' money, albeit that will be proverbial money, that is going to be going to the repair work to the Moonshiners Racing Club 152 BMW. And in fact, I think he's actually damaged the rear left suspension as well, that. But he's celebrated. He doesn't care right now because he's just pulled off back-to-back feature race wins. And, well, what a performance from Dean Sheasby. And I think right now, really, we could say he is the king of changeable conditions. He is the Michael of Split B. But as all the drivers cool and calm their way down, well, Ross Norsworthy right now makes his way on a cool down, and a solid job from him to finish 13th. But as he rolls his way through Pawn Bend, let's take a look at those race results subject to Eddie Stewart's inquiries. And, well, here they are, ladies and gentlemen, as we do take a look to the scenic view. So in a race that definitely had a little bit of everything here at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, it was Dean Sheasby who took victory in round number 4 of the championship for Moonshiners Racing Club, over in Premier. Behind him by 21 seconds, Nick Stubb for Glass Tech Racing, and then a further 7 seconds behind Liam Yaniso, the privateer. It was an all-Premier overall podium, and then we came to Mark De Vries in 4th place for Sim Racing Team Lowlands, just ahead of fellow countryman, but your Evo class winner for MJK Sim Racing, Denny Plurger, who absolutely delivered perfection here today, where it be that late pole position in qualifying, alternatively just getting the job done for victory on track. James Bostock, 6th there, under the radar for Calme GP2 Racing, but that's where he likes to be. And 19 seconds behind him, Mark Johnson for Axis Simsport Ice. James Fraser was your runner-up in at the Evo class of Moonshiners Racing Club after Austin Graff's late mistake, and Graff being relegated to 3rd place in Evo, 9th overall for Axis Simsport Ice. With Jordan Maymar there, 4th place in Evo, couldn't quite get the fuel tank to go the one extra lap, and the Simcast Racing Team UK driver just missed out on the podium, but still he'll be happy to continue his run of top 5 finishes. Klaas Vellen, 11th there, best of the rest of Penguin Racing endeavours ahead of Team Nubish's Ryan Abbott to round off the Evo top 5. And it was Ross Norsworth with Simcast Racing Team UK in 13th in a quiet race for him after a dramatic start. But the latter stages were much quieter. Then Robin Pownier for Simcoach and John Lippert for Calme GP2 Racing, who rounded off your top 15. Now we're going to focus more on the class finishing positions very shortly because that's where all the points are scored. But in terms of your last lead lap finisher, it was Wesley Van Rens for 9 Pegasus Panthera. And then we did see from the 18th place driver a lap down to the likes of Danny Ware for Dexterous Motorsport Zemix. And it was a lap down all the way down to none other than our 32nd place finisher of Eduardo Andino in the LS Racing McLaren. That spent a lot of time without a front bumper, but in the end it had to come in and repair it. It was 2 laps down to Martin Kenyon, along with Andrew Montine, Rob Smith and Rachel Hugh, who finished in 36th place. And then your last classified finishers, because they were 5 laps down, so therefore they will be considered in the race results, Jonathan Berry, Craig Tillison and Scott Crossridge in 39th. Non-finishers as classified then for 40th place finisher Rob McCoy and downwards. And from the Dexterous Motorsport Zemix driver, we also had non-finishes for Andrew Fellows, Samuel Clark, and continuing on there with an absolutely plentiful field today, Barry Wemman retiring due to health issues, albeit very happy to see him there tuning in straight after. Also Eddie Theobald, in fact we jumped over Ian King, George Stone, Eddie Theobald, Matthias Smolny, Simon Hunt, Stuart Rice, Robin Aston, Owen Seward, Adam Baker, and also our 2 drivers there of Sean Clark and James Pallett. So 54 starters, ladies and gentlemen, and well, what a race it was. But in the end, only a grand total of 38 made it to the finish, of which 18 on the lead lap. Coming to the individual class finishing positions then, and this is where all the points are scored and where it truly matters. In the Premier class, Dean Sheasby makes it back-to-back wins, does the Englishman, and what a result ahead of Nick Stubb for Glass Tech Racing and Liam Yaniso with his first podium of the season, rounding off your top 3. Sim Racing Team Lowlands, Mark De Vries there in 4th, a top 5 finish. He'll be happy with that, but not happy with the fact he missed out on the podium by the best part of 13 seconds, but still a comfortable 30 seconds ahead of James Bostock, who completed the top 5 for Calme GP2 Racing. And whilst he will lose his championship lead to Dean Sheasby, he won't be too far behind going into round number 5. In 6th, Mark Johnson ahead of Klaas Vellen, with Ross Norsworth, Robin Pownier and John Ludbrook completing your top 10, and then Wesley Van Rens in 11th place, completing the lead lap finishes for the Premier class. And Danny Ware, 12th, ahead of Luke Bailey. There's Menno Blom and Pete Piver completing your top 15. Martin Kenyon, 2 laps down, 16th ahead of Andrew Montine and Rob Smith. 5 laps down to Scott Crossridge. And then we did have the non-finishes as classified for Rob Mackay, Andrew Fellows, Ian King. And also we did see there George Stone, Matthias Smolny, Simon Hunt, Stuart Rice, Robin Aston, Adam Baker and James Pallett. Coming to the Euro class then, last but by no means least. And here we saw Denny Ploger absolutely dominate today strategically with a win of over a minute for MJK Sim Racing ahead of James Fraser. What a way to pick up your first class win of the season if your name's Denny Ploger. That is absolutely staggering. And we'll keep it in mind on the fact yet to pick up a podium this season, and Sonny Ploger going the full distance to win. Well, for your first podium of the season, that's definitely the one you want. Moonshiners Racing Club's James Fraser, a brilliant second place finish there, and he'll be happy with that one, all things considered on reflection, ahead of Axis Simsport Ice's Austin Graff, who in the end had to settle for third. A mistake under pressure from James Fraser, and that was the Delta. Jordan Maymar, 4th there, a further 6 seconds behind for Simcast Racing Team UK. And will the championship leader coming into tonight will continue to hold on to that lead, and will he'll continue his run of top 5 finishes. Then we did see from him Ryan Abbott in 5th for Team Nubish. A further 19 seconds, it was Steve Rubino for Hobo Racing. And then your last lead lap finish for the Evo class was none other than Daniel Paul in 7th. From the Flatline Racing driver, it was then a lap down to Sammy Ariba, Robert Savage and Grant Miller, who completed your top 10, and also to Philip McConaughey in 11th, who started off strong, but struggled as the race went on. Tiago Reza, your winner from Fuji, was struggling in the conditions here at Spa, taking 12th ahead of Oliver Forsstrom, and it was Matt Stace, Andy Chell and Matthew Hunter finishing in 16th. That was followed up by Eduardo and Dino in 17th that completed your drives who finished a lap down. It was 2 laps down to Rachel Hugh, and then it was 5 down to Jonathan Berry and Craig Tillerson, with non-finishers as classified there. For 21st place finisher Samuel Clark, also Barry Wenman, and I believe we also did see retirements for Eddie Theobald, Owen Stewart and Sean Clark. So that's a rundown of the race results, ladies and gentlemen, and the finisher positions for all the drives, provisionally, of course, subject to any stewards' inquiries. But we're not quite done with today's broadcast, of course, because whilst the racing may have finished and the circuit has fallen quiet, we've still got plenty of stuff to come when it comes to interviews from our drivers. And we'll be back to kick those off in approximately 5 to 6 minutes' time. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We will see you shortly for our post-round interviews. You won't want to miss them.
Of the green flag, and there we go. Tristan immediately getting the jump on his teammate Luke Lucchese, and he's going to have to go the long way around the outside. It's not done yet because Luke will have that favoured inside line going into turn 1 side by side. Has had a good start. He's up 2 places around the outside of Luke Lucchese, 3 wide there. The blue Acura on the inside. Hayden Phoenix Miller has gone from 4th to 1st in the matter of 1 braking zone there, and he will carry these drivers now down in toward turn 4. Great start there for the debutant who had strong qualifying pace, and now he might be up with an opportunity of making that stick if he can get the clean air in the next, and Plurg could have a good run here. Let's ride on board. How does the Noblica defend going into the chicane? Is Plurg going to do that tactic where you just stay there right until the last Noblica moves over to the entry into the chicane? Good driving. That's a wobble by Tristan, and he's off the road. He's going to lose the position. Is he going to stick up the inside? No. And is Justin Eloff going to fancy his chances? No, he stays.
Watkins Glen, and to have only 9 minutes till we reset and go again gives, I think, the drivers a bit of a moment to pause for thought, because how are you going to manage this, especially if you're 3 wide down the main straight? Humphrey, Leskinen, Catrali, all don't get out Raj Harper 2x2 into the opening corner. Outside line taken for Humphreys. Also a little bit of time on the exit though, as it looks like it's a better run for Kalle Leskinen, the leader now in that pro class, as they run their way up the hill through 2 and 3. It looks like Raz Harper's got the best run, and now we could see both the lead drivers come through on both pro drivers. So they'll have to get it done on the outside of the bus stop, and that is going to be more than difficult to do. Who's going to get the slipstream? That could be crucial. Now will be on the clock as the pace car is about to roll back in. GT3, so many of them about to get racing. GT4 distant behind as well. A brand new season is about to get going here at the Saxon Ring. It's ESR's GT European Championship, and Anton Kalo will lead us to green for the opening time this season. Jason Baxter and Jenny Tehar just in behind as the lights are on. The green flag flies, and there's a couple of drivers pulling out immediately of the pack. 3 wide, nearly 4 wide into the opening turn, with Denzel Clarkson trying to find an inside line. Jenny Tehar as well.
More, he's got Craig Hewlett in P11 just coming down the pit lane now with Henry Garcia, so this is going to end up being quite a tight battle. If they're going to also have Pedro to deal with, he would just be coming out in front of them. Yeah, he's a little bit further down the road, so these two are going side by side through a very, very tricky section. Looks like Craig's got the better of it done for the moment.
Seconds in the pit strategy, whether it's a 20-minute overcut, 20-minute undercut, we'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, Jenny Tehar and Jason Baxter are fighting it out for the lead of the overall race. Baxter trying to make his way through. It'll have to be an outside line into turn 2 where a GT4 sits on the racing line. That's the number 14 that they have to negotiate their way around. But if they run through turns 2 and through turn 3, they don't have to now worry about that GT4 any longer, and can continue working their way down a long way, and it can help you build in things like GT3, maybe some prototype cars as well. But yeah, it's so impressive to see him doing so well at the front of the field. Joe Glass getting himself, his teammate I should mention, as I said. Oh, still interesting to that. That's a send from Dave Van Dam very late on the brakes into turn 1, but he's got it stopping the apex. That's an incredible move. Very, very surprising for Joe Glass to find a car on his inside there, but effective for Dave Van Dam, and he has caught Joe Glass napping.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for us to kick off our post-round interviews, and we're going to jump straight to it and be joined by the man who, after his heroics at Fuji only a week ago, has now made it 2 Premier Feature Race wins out of 2. It's none other than Dean Sheasby who joins me. Good evening to you again, Dean, and well, what a way to follow up your performance in Japan. A phenomenal drive to victory. How was that for you?
That was incredible, mate. I thought at the beginning of the race that I completely made the wrong call with the tyres. I knew it was going to rain, but at what point? And I think if there was 2 more laps, Nick Stubb would have won that race. That's how close it was. Two more laps of dry, and he'd have won it. So yeah, bit of luck with the weather, but yeah, definitely the right call with the tyres.
Well, you made the right call with the tyres at the start of the race, but before all of that, let's talk a little bit about qualifying. Stable conditions in qualifying, dry as the tarmac on which you're racing at the start of the race, of course. However, what exactly happened? Because you started off well in qualifying, but 7th place seemed to be the peak of your performance. Was that everything out there, or was there a little something missing?
That's me going back to my old style of not being able to qualify to the pace that I can actually do. So in practice, I was chucking 16s, and I could have gone mid to low 16s. Quali just couldn't put it together. Again, same old with me.
Well, difficulty perhaps in qualifying, like you say, going back to that old trait of having all the pace in practice, but as soon as you're required to do it in anger, it didn't quite work out. However, the flip side of the coin being, of course, that we did get to see a brilliant race start from yourself. But just take us through that whole complexity, because, of course, we can't see the forecast just before you head into the grid. I mean, what was going through your mind as you tried to get onto the grid?
So I literally jumped in and out the car 3 or 4 times, iffing and ahhing, just switched to the dries. I was looking at the radar, and the radar was showing only a tiny little bit of cloud/rain coming over, and I'm like, do I swap? Do I not swap? Then the big question is, what's the boss man on? Is he on wets? Is he on dries? But I couldn't find out because he wasn't near me, so I didn't know what tyre he was running. So it was like, I don't know what to do, and it got to about 10 seconds. Like, I'm going wet, so I've got no choice. I'm going wet, and that was basically that was the decision. And then I was just hoping for that rain to come, and my teammates will clarify for the first 4 laps or so, I was cursing like there was no tomorrow, thinking that yeah, it's all gone Pete Tong.
Oh, goodness me. Well, you may have been cursing by making that call, but gradually it was the right call. And at what point did it come to you, the fact that you had made the right decision? Was it when the first drop of rain came, or was it when you saw the rain actually was going to be quite substantial that you felt, okay, I've actually got this right?
To be honest, my teammates got the rain first. It was still dry at the part of the track I was on, and he was saying it's raining. I was like, thank God. And then literally the next lap, I think Kostrick was 3 or 4 seconds potentially in front of me. And then I clawed it back pretty much instantly in the lap. I'm like, this is turning. This is where it's going to come on. And then it's like, the question is how far have the lads got up front, and how far can they actually go on these tyres before having to make that pit stop? Because I knew that the fuel would be very tight with when they actually pitted in. And to be fair, I was thinking Nick, maybe if it had been fuel saving, could have potentially stretched it, but obviously he couldn't. He had to come and pit in. So yeah, as I said earlier, 2 more laps, the wet tyre wouldn't have worked. It'd have been an interesting finish, put it that way. We'd have been very close going over the line if it had been 2 more laps.
Well, like you say, very close, and that's sometimes how it goes, and it worked out in your favour today, whereas perhaps on another day it would have worked out for Nick by comparison. But all the way through, one thing we definitely saw from yourself was just lap after lap of brilliance. I mean, where everybody else was doing 2-minute 40s, you were doing 2-minute 38s. The only driver who seemed to match you over distance was none other than Mr. Nick Stubb himself. I mean, were you just in the zone around there? Are you giving yourself a lap time you were targeting, or was it just, I can go faster and faster every lap?
To be honest, I don't want to sound too, well, I don't know what the word is for it, but I was actually taking it a lot easier than I had done in the practice sessions I've been doing. So I, because I could see that P2 was just dropping from me, and then P3 was even further, I was easing just to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. So how I had the extra space, maybe because I was out in front and had a bit of clear air to drive in, maybe it was the difference of me able to get them fastest times. But yeah, there was definitely more pace if I needed it there. At the same time, I didn't want to push it because I know one mistake and it's game over here. So I think the biggest factor for getting out in front was I knew at some point it was going to rain, and if any strategy was going to work regarding the tyres, I had to be the fastest wet runner, and I managed to get, I think it was Liam, I overtook the other BMW to get into the front of the wet runners, and then once I got in front, I managed to stay in front, and then that obviously, once they all started to pit in, it just gave me the free track in front to just extend the lead.
Well, it all clicked together, and very interesting there, you're talking about the fact not quite pushing it as hard as perhaps you could have, and really focusing on driving the car at a sensible pace in order to get the most out of the tyre, out of the car, and survive the race, the most important part. But on the whole situation with Nick Stubb, of course, we also thought in the commentary if he might have been able to go the full distance. He may not. In the end, he did wilt under the pressure of the fuel tank right towards the end. I mean, was there a moment where you were perhaps panicking at all? Or alternatively, you're thinking to yourself, he's not going to pit? Or was it just, I'll just wait and see what happens? If he's done it, he's done it. If not, I just take second.
Exactly how you just said it at the end. It was, if Nick's done it, I'll take my hat off to him. He's outstrotted me. If I've done it, then I've outstrotted him. I knew it was between us two towards the latter stages. And to be honest, if I'd come in P2, I'd still been really happy for the pure fact that I started off on them wets. And at the time, it didn't seem to be the right tyre. So to have come P2, if that was the scenario, would have been a fantastic result anyway.
Well, would have been a fantastic result, like you say, but in the end, an incredible result to add another victory to your hat. It means heading towards round number 5, I should say. Let's get our numbers right. You are going to be our Premier Championship leader with 2 wins in 4 rounds. I mean, is that what you expected at the start of this season?
No. I always aim for top 10, but not to be at the top at the moment. No, that was a bit of a shock, but at the same time, I always do well in these wet races, and we've had 2 back-to-back wet races where the points have come in. It'll probably flip on its head again once we get onto the dry, so...
Well, you talk about things flipping on their head. We head to VIR next week, and we are expecting static dry conditions, as I understand it. How do you feel for the American circuit?
That I'm going to go outside and do a rain dance. To be honest, I've only ever raced it once, and it was in the wet, and in the nicest possible way. I'm so glad it's not wet, because when we did it a season or 2 ago, random puddles on that track just kept appearing, and I don't know if that was because I was in VR, but I couldn't drive that circuit in the wet, so hopefully I'll be able to do it better in the dry.
Oh, goodness me. Well, hopefully in those more stable conditions, things will work out for you there, but only time will tell in a week's time. But Dean, just before I do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Yeah, to the organisers for setting up a great event again. Also to the teammates, especially James Fraser, got his first podium in Evo today, which was absolutely fantastic for him. So 2 moonshiners on the podium was fantastic for the team. So yeah, and yourself for the stream. I absolutely love the stream. Watching it back, I can't wait to go watch this one again.
Oh, Dean. Well, like you say, I mean, hats off to yourself and also James, both of you on your respective podiums. We're going to talk to James shortly as well to hear his story. But your story's been a fantastic one to talk about, no doubt about it. And we look forward to seeing whether you can continue this run of wins at VIR in a week's time. But until then, my friend, well done once again. Savour the moment. You've definitely deserved it. If Fuji was fantastic, then here at Spa, you've been sensational. And we will see you in a week's time. Have a great rest of your evening.
Andrew, Paul, thank you very much, mate. Have a good night.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Moonshiners Racing Club's Dean Sheasby. He's absolutely ecstatic with that performance, no doubt about it. Another win, thriving in these conditions. However, interesting, at Fuji, it all clicked together in qualifying. Here at Spa, it all looked good in practice. It didn't look good when he had to do it in qualifying. 7th was the best he could do, and returning to his old ways, he says, of having all the pace in practice, but no pace in qualifying. However, with the forecast, sunny turning to a significant band of rain was coming much sooner than everybody anticipated. He had to make the call. And with his teammates starting much further down the order, he couldn't rely on knowing what they were going to. He had to make the call for himself. And in the end, he went to the wet. He thought he got it wrong. And suddenly, it all came right 10 minutes in, the rain started, and when it did, it wasn't him who saw it first, it was his teammates. They called it and said the rain was coming, and, well, suddenly he was able to flick the switch on. However, credit where it's due. Nick Stubb tried to take the fuel tank all the way to the end, but couldn't quite do so, and in the end had to relinquish the lead to Dean, and Dean admitting there, he wasn't thinking about, will Nick be able to do it, will not. He just simply said to himself, if Nick can do it, well done to him. If not, I'll take the win. But either way, I'm on that podium. And that is the mentality of a man who's not necessarily, he says he's aiming for a top 10 this season, but we are of the mentality of a man, I think, who is definitely moving forward from season 8. And I'm going to put this out there now, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, he may not like the static dry conditions as much as these changeable conditions, but if he keeps this up, Dean Sheasby could be an early favourite for the Premier Championship. And, well, the Moonshiners Racing Club driver is definitely getting a growing array of fans. Can he carry on that at VIR? We'll find out next round. Now, we've got more interviews to come, of course, and we've got one more interview coming up very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, we've got 2 coming up, but our next interview is just around the corner. We'll be back very shortly to reveal who it's going to be. And, well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go from one Moonshiners Racing Club driver to another Moonshiners Racing Club driver now. We go from a Premier sensation to an Evo star. It's none other than James Fraser, the man who started at the back of the field and found his way all the way through to an 8th place finish overall, 2nd place in the Evo class. James, how was that for you?
Lovely. Thanks, Paul. Good to speak to you. Yeah, I love that. That was right up my alley when it rains. Otherwise, I'm struggling for pace at the back, but when it rains, I'm right in it.
Well, as they say, when it rains, it pours, and in your instance, it pours full of places. I mean, tell us a little bit about qualifying first. The fact that, in the end, no valid lap set. I believe, did you have a penalty coming into tonight? I've just got to double check, or could you confirm? Did you have a penalty, or did it just go wrong in qualifying?
No penalty. My brother had a penalty.
Ah, right. Yes, it's Liam, not yourself.
No, well, qualifying, that's quite a question because I was going out and it was dry and I was just picking up bad habits that were nothing to do with all the practice I'd done in the dry, wet. So I abandoned qualifying and made a cup of tea because I didn't want to be near anyone going up Eau Rouge, and I didn't want to develop any bad habits from the dry. And I felt myself doing it, so we got out the car.
Oh, goodness me. Well, it didn't work out in qualified at all. Plenty of bad habits, but from all those bad habits, it seemed as though plenty of good habits arose when the race started. Now, Dean was telling us only moments ago, he didn't know which tyre to go onto, literally until the dying seconds of the gridding procedure. How was it for you on the grid?
Well, that's where we take our hat off to Dean there, because he did some testing during the week and it paid off really, because he said the magic word straight away after his first test, said it again after the second one, which was never going to be a dry tyre, don't matter. And from that point onwards I was like, practice only with a wet tyre, let's do it. And it paid off because every second I practiced was on the wet tyre. Probably again why qualifying didn't go well in the dry.
Oh, goodness me. Well, all that practice on the wet tyre and Dean's foreshadowing of it's going to be a wet tyre race definitely coming in handy. And what was it like in the early stages of the race for yourself? Because, of course, everybody around you, well, most drivers around you on the slick, they were faster. I mean, when you thinking to yourself, okay, I've just got to really be careful to begin with because I don't want to overheat the tyre, was it, you know what, I'm just going to latch onto the back of them. When the rain eventually arrives, I'll suddenly just find my way ahead of them all.
That's exactly what it was, Paul. Yeah, it was. I managed to get myself to the back of the field just after one lap, skillfully. But as anyone in this league will tell you, I'm well versed in letting people past. I think my car should be blue. But hey, I do my best. And it can do the best. Oh, sorry, I paused some chain apart there, Paul. Sorry. I was thinking about not crashing into people.
No worries at all, no worries at all. I can appreciate it has been a very long race for yourself and you're probably quite exhausted. Well, from initial management, when the rain came, I bet there was a big smile on your face as though, you know what, now I can start to really take these places.
Yeah, that was what my point before. Yeah, I just saved my tyres. Absolutely, used 0 tyre, let everybody past, and then I got grip halfway through, maybe lap 2 or something like that. That's when I first felt it, and then a bit further on, that's when I had it in the traction, and I'm like, we're on. Let's go for it. Me and Dean at the same time. Right, we're on. And then it's tough to keep it on slicks, so we got quite a few freebies. Made through one incident pretty well. But other than that, well done to Ploger, because he did overtake me on track as well, didn't he? So he was all over me for ages, and then he did me. I think pretty sure it was fair and square, because I can't remember too much about it.
Well, Denny may have been the only driver to beat you at Evo today, and did so in an absolutely standout way. But flip side of the coin being second place from yourself, having started at the very back of the Evo class. I mean, just take us through, as the race was heading towards the end, a lot of drivers having to pit, either for fuel or alternatively because they got the tyres wrong. I mean, was there a point where you thought to yourself, okay, there's a top 10 in this, okay, there's a top 5, okay, there's a podium in this, or was it just take the places one by one and see where I end up?
Well, it was probably about 35 to 40 minutes in. I looked down and I think I was in 14th or 15th. And I thought, well, nobody's been in the pits and I'm 14th or 15th. So just keep your head down. Get to the end, and then I didn't know anything. And the lads obviously didn't tell me. They just said, just keeping my head down, didn't tell me what position I were in. But I kind of had a feeling I wanted a podium on Evo, so got that, buddy.
Oh, well, that will definitely do it, no doubt about it. I mean, in terms of results this season, a standout result for yourself. I believe that's your first podium in class this season as well. So, I mean, huge points coming your way. And after 4 rounds, I think you needed some big points to the board.
Yeah, between a holiday and the atrocious Fuji race where I turned in on a couple of people, apologies to them, but nobody died. So yeah, I had a bad one at Fuji, so I'm just trying not to get disqualified for any races, trying to stay away from everybody. And it was working, but I'm just going to hope Fuji's the only blotch on that record this season.
Well, you've definitely turned things around for Fuji here at Spa today. And next week, we head to VIR. How are you feeling for round number 5?
I'm feeling that's a bit tight. It's a bit tight over there. So we'll see. Everyone will be best behaved like they have been for the last couple of weeks while it's been extremely tough. So let's take that into the dry, and then the tight track, but still favours the setup really. So let's see how hard people work.
Oh, well, we definitely look forward to seeing what you can do and what magic you can make happen on the setup and over race distance at VIR. But just before we do let you go, James, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Yep, I want to thank the Moonshiners Racing Club, the boys. Thanks for not telling me what position I were in, because I may have gone off. So that was good. So yeah, thanks everyone. We support each other in there. So yeah, just them lot. That'd be brilliant.
Well, James, I'm sure your teammates will definitely appreciate the thank you, and I think they'll be laughing at the fact they didn't tell you where you were going to finish, so that way you finished strong. But with that, thank you for joining me in the interview room. It's always a pleasure, and well done on your first podium of the season. I'm sure there's plenty more out there for you, and we will see whether you can carry that on at VIR. But until then, my friend, enjoy the moment and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you very much, Paul. Same to you, buddy. Thanks for the broadcast. It's brilliant.
It's my pleasure. Take care. So here in there, ladies and gentlemen, from I think an exhausted James Fraser, the Moonshiners Racing Club driver, much like Dean Sheasby, the premier man who really put on a premier performance. Well, James Fraser, an revolutionary today from the back of the field. But what a reversal of fortunes. Qualifying, in his own words, just picking up bad habits everywhere in qualifying. No valid lap set over a 20-minute period. I mean, that's not to belittle him, but that goes to show you get it wrong in qualifying, and it really does go wrong. And the Moonshiners Racing Club driver having to start from the very back of a 54-car field. Now, choosing to go on the wet tyre and mentioning there straight away, he knew at the start all he's got to do is take it nice and easy. Do not use the tyre at all. Protect it, and when the rain arrives, presuming it arrives, it will be golden. He got to the back of the field, i.e. he was right on the back of the first couple of cars after a few tries had instance, and he was able then to use the wet tyre to roar his way up positions, and very quickly, at the midway point of the race, find himself inside the top 20, and that was before all the pit stops started to play out in terms of fuel. And for James Fraser at that point, well, he was on course definitely for a class podium, but would it be at the top step, or alternatively the second or the third step? Well, for him in the end, it was going to be the second step. He put the pressure on to Austin Graf, and he made that work out, but he was not quite able to touch Denny Plurger, and, well, in the end, won't be complaining about that second place in class, and he's hoping now that he can make even more of it happen and continue to right the wrongs of Fuji. I think he can, and I think James Fraser needed this one big result just to give him that boost, and now he's got it. We are going to see the James Fraser of Season 8 back in full form, and I definitely look forward to seeing it, because he was a fast driver in Season 8. I think now he's going to be just as fast, if not even quicker, here in Season 9. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've still got one more interview to come, and, well, who's it going to be? We're going to find out very shortly when we come back to our final interview of this evening. Don't go anywhere. We will be back very soon. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we come to our final interviewee, and it's none other than Danny Weir joining me in the interview room. Danny, it's great to have you back in the interview room with me. It's been a little bit of time since we've heard from yourself and that wonderful 155 at McLaren. A challenging day today. However, with all things considered, given where you qualified compared to where you finished, I don't think you're going to be complaining about this one.
No, not too much. Qualified pretty poorly, but I'd say I'm never a good qualifier. What made it worse was that I then decided while we were waiting for to start rolling to then change to wet tyres. That's why everyone else in the wets. So I jumped out the car. As I did that, well, missed the start. So I ended up starting at 54th, and I thought at that point I might as well just leave the dryers on and try and make up some lap time. So yeah, it worked out alright in the end.
So it clicked together in the end, but definitely it didn't get off to a good start. Like you say, missing the start effectively. But before all that, qualifying, I mean, we just heard from the man who started last on the grid saying he picked up every bad habit in the book and couldn't put a lap together. What happens for yourself in qualifying?
To be honest, that was actually my fastest qualifying I've ever done. I think my optimal was only a 10th higher than what I actually set. So for me, that was actually a pretty solid lap. I'm just not very quick on a one lap basis. I'm more of a consistent driver, and I can probably do more of them laps back to back. I'm new to the car. I'm still learning the car. I want to be up there again, but yeah, even like last season, I never really qualified pole. I was always 4th, 5th, or 6th. So for me, as long as I'm improving, I'm getting near as I can to Rob. I was happy.
Well, definitely, it's a good insight there, and appreciate that, and the honesty as well. I think many who are tuning in right now, if they wanted a little bit of motivation, if they're feeling as though they're not fast over a single lap, they'll learn from yourself on that one, and definitely I'll take inspiration from that as well. Going into the race then, that consistency did seem to shine because, of course, you technically missed the start, so started from the back, but the rain didn't take long before it arrived. I mean, we just heard from James Fraser, who pretty much said to the point of protect the tyre, rain arrives, then you can go full hammer and tongs. Was it the same for yourself?
If anything, it was the complete opposite. So I was on the dries. I had to basically know that these tyres are not going to last. I need to just use the best to my ability. Obviously, at the start, where they're freezing cold, you're actually going slower than the guys on the wet tyres because obviously their tyres are heated up a lot quicker because of the grip. So it took about a lap and a half to kind of warm up. But then once it warmed up, I was then overtaking these drivers on the wets, trying to get as high up as I could before the rain come in. Then the rain came, I think, about lap 3 or end of lap 2, start of lap 3. And I was like, okay, so it might take, I'm going to have a couple of laps to even like register. And then by the end of that lap, you're thinking, oh my God, this track is completely different. So yeah, it was a struggle to try and keep it on track and then see how long you could go. and then it was in a gamble whether you go one more lap or you just cut your losses and come in. I ended up going an extra lap than most drivers. I come in with a big bulk, but there was another lot of guys that came in after as well. But I think that's really the right call to make after that. And then, yeah, it was just trying to learn what these wet tyres are like. And again, they're freezing cold, and all the other drivers on the wets have nice warm tyres. So, yeah, you'll lose a lot of time there. It was very difficult, but I said it's enjoyable because it's just not what you're used to at this kind of track.
Oh, indeed. And I appreciate you breaking it down there in terms of the challenge of knowing when to go from the slick to the wet tyre and the pros and cons of doing it at the right time versus the wrong time. And it's great to hear you enjoying the challenge of trying to figure out when's the right time. Indeed, a very different style of race compared to what we've had so far this season. Now, we did see in some of the replay footage a couple of spins for yourself. X Corner catching out many a slick shod runner today, and even those on the wet, to be fair, late on in the race. But once you had made the changeover, it looked at that point you could just get your head down and focus on the driving.
Yeah, pretty much. I said you have to be very careful. The McLaren is very tail happy at the best of times. So in the wet, if you put your foot down a second too early, you're spinning. But yeah, it was just a case of zoning in and not just remembering that this is a wet track. You can't just push it like you normally would. Take corners differently. And yeah, just try and just grind out them laps as much as you could. So I think I did quite well. Got up to about 12th. Realised I was running out of fuel, so I was quite happy to see Dean come past and lap me. I think I crossed the line with 1 litre of fuel left, so I wouldn't have made another lap. But it was very difficult because obviously you just don't know what the fuel's going to do. If you put in too much fuel, you're going to end up having excess when you're crossing the line, especially because of the wet. If you put not enough, you end up like me and end up nearly missing the end of the race.
Oh, goodness me. Well, you ran it very tight on fuel, but in the end just had enough to get to the finish. And 19th overall, 12th in class. Some points bagged there. So all in all, a positive outcome?
Yeah, definitely. And my main goal, obviously, beating Rob Mackay, massive accomplishment for me. And actually highest DXT finisher in our split. So again, very happy with that. Any time I can get near the top 10, I am over the moon. So yeah, brilliant race. Hopefully next week I can do it again, and I can try and just grind these points in.
Well, speaking of next week, we head to a rather sunny Virginia International Raceway. Static conditions, will that favour you more, or would you prefer to have changeable conditions again?
I don't mind changeable conditions. I'm still learning the car, so I'm not sure how it acts in the wet as such, because we've had this race today, you can't really tell. But Virginia's a great track. It's a very, very quick circuit and in very windy corners, so you've got to know what you're doing. So I'll be looking forward to getting some practice in this week and trying to grind then laps in. But yeah, I love the track. Hopefully it's one that favours the McLaren.
Well, we look forward to seeing what you can do and what magic you make happen with the McLaren at Virginia International Raceway. But until then, and just before we let you go, Danny, anyone you want to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Yeah, my massive thank you to yourself, obviously, for doing all the streaming. Massive, and obviously, big thank you to all my DXT boys that definitely good support in the chat, giving each other tips and stuff. So yeah, but basically, it's just the whole community. They've been really good.
Oh, well, fantastic to hear that. And indeed, it's the community behind the teams and the series that really do make it at the core. And you're one big part of that, of course, Danny. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room this evening. A solid drive from yourself. It may have started off in a difficult note at the beginning of the race, but by the end of it, finished inside the top 20. And like you say, the highest finishing DXT driver in Split B. That's always a big thumbs up, I'm sure, for yourself and the team. But with that, we'll see you at VR in a week's time. And until then, my friend, have a great rest of your evening.
Yeah, you too, mate. Have a good week.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Dexterous Motorsport Zemex's Danny Ware, and well, the Premier driver absolutely enjoying himself out there today, and really great for his honesty there, talking about qualifying and saying that the 41st place he took on the grid wasn't because he struggled. That was him delivering one of his best laps, only a 10th off of his optimum. And what goes to show that sometimes some drivers out there, even if they are in the top class of the split, they may not be the fastest because of the circuit, because the conditions or getting used to the car. But altogether, he decided to get his head down and in the race go for it. However, made a late call to go to the slick tyre, end up at the back of the grid effectively because he didn't make it to the grid, so had to start from the pit lane, and in doing so went to the tyre that would be proved to be the wrong tyre. And he did struggle early on, talking out the fact, really trying to get the temperature in the tyre and having to find his way past the wet runners to then try and hold on against the wet runners until he could make the wet pit stop. He switched to the wet tyre, that was. But in the end, whilst the strategy perhaps wasn't exactly spot on, he didn't give up. Finished 19th, took 12th in class, some good points, it's a foundation, and as he said, we'll continue to grind out those points when we head to VIR, and we look forward to plenty more from what he can do in that McLaren 720S in a week's time. But definitely, Danny Weir is one of those drivers we need to keep our eyes on, because you never know what surprise he can spring, and indeed he's not shy from a few top fives or podiums over his Evolution Sim Racing GT3 career. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings our interviews to a close. And we want to say a big thank you to all of our interviews this evening. It's been great to hear from them. We heard from, firstly, Dean Sheasby from Moonshiners Racing Club, the Premier winner today, an overall winner. We then heard from his teammate in the Evo class, James Fraser, the man who started right at the back of the field, but crusaded his way to 8th overall and 2nd in the Evo class. And we've just heard from none other than Danny Weir, the dexterous motorsport Zemex driver, who in the end may have had some struggles early on in the race, but ended his race on a high with the best result of the team in Split B. Well done to all three of them on their respective results, and a big thank you to them all for joining me in the interview room, and we'll definitely have more interviews in a week's time at VIR. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about being on the grid at Evolution Sim Racing or just wanting to join the community, well, on the grid, of course, we do have our Thursday evening GT3 Championship, and we are currently in Season 9. You've been tuning into that today. At the weekend, we do have the alternating series of the European GT Championship and also the Danny Lee DLPC GT Omega Porsche Cup, brought to you in collaboration with Danny Lee and also GT Omega there. They're on alternative weekends. But soon, the European GT Championship will be coming to a close, and when it does, it will be followed up by the Americas GT Challenge, where we will see on Sunday evenings, it will be motocross racing action in GT3s and GTEs. And I believe that grid is almost full, but if you are a GT fan or a GT3 fan or a fan of both, then get yourself on the grid. And if you don't want to join any of these series, perhaps you're just looking to practice somewhere in amongst like-minded sim racing individuals, well, do keep in mind, we do have our free-to-join practice league that runs on Tuesday evenings and also Saturday afternoons. So there's somewhere to be on the grid at Evolution Sim Racing, whether you are a rookie all the way through to a fully fledged esports competitor. And to join the Evolution Sim Racing Discord and get on track with us all and get in touch with the community, all you've got to do is use the invite link available on screen, alternatively the QR code. We'll also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our series and league sponsors, who do include, of course, our title sponsor for the GT3 Championship, Trophy AI, also Carme, Modern Technology. We'll also like to say a big thank you to one of our main sponsors for this season, Sim Coach, where you can unlock your true potential as a sim racer, also to the GP2 group, and lastly, we'd like to say a big thank you to Motorsport UK's esports division for recognising Evolution Sim Racing as a recommended community. We're very proud of that status, and long may it continue, and a big thank you to Motorsport UK for that recognition. But ladies and gentlemen, after two highly challenging rounds of mixed conditions, round number 4 has gone past us, and round number 5 in a week's time will see us make our way at stateside once again. And in our return to the US of A, we head to the US state of Virginia for VIR, the Virginia International Raceway. Tight, twisty and windy, with plenty of opportunities for overtakes as well at the end of its long straight. VIR is going to be a circuit about survival and avoiding the green stuff while staying on the black stuff. But we will come away victorious there in the first of a triple header of sprint race rounds. We'll find out in a week's time, and we should remind you that for the purposes of the Round 5 broadcast, due to scheduling availability, the racing will occur on Thursday the 24th of July 2025, but we will be bringing you the racing action as if it were live the day after on Friday the 25th of July. So do not be alarmed, the broadcast will be a day later than normal, but I promise you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't tuned into a post-race broadcast, it will be as close as possible to the raw live viewing experience, and it's one not to be missed, because who will be the one to master the Virginia circuit? We'll find out then, but until then, we've been Evolution Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, like our drivers, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.
For the upcoming right-hander, brake 30 meters later and ease off the pressure.